Planning Commission. Welcome. My name is Bob Thornton, and I am the chairman of the commission. Before we get started, I've asked Ed Whedon to lead us in prayer, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Don Horsley. Please stand.
That's awesome.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we have forgiven our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Oh, Heavenly Father, we just give thanks to you today, Lord, for bringing us together one more day, for waking us up, closing our right mind, starting us on our way. We ask you, Lord, to come into this place today, Lord, and touch each commission member from the top of their head to the soles of their feet, Lord God. Bless those that are here. Bless those on the way. We ask you, Lord, to make your presence known, Lord, as the decisions we make today will glorify you, Lord, and your kingdom. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Don, for the prayer and the pledge. I've asked Commissioner Mike Inman to please introduce the members.
Thank you, Chairman Thornton. And to your left, let me begin over there and introduce you to Kay Wilson, who is our city attorney. Next to her is Jack Wall, who's a civil engineer who represents the Rose Hall District. Next to Jack is Dr. Karen Kwasny, who is a professor and represents the Princess Anne District. Next to her is Don Horsley, who's a farmer, and he is at large. Next to him is Ron Ripley, who is in real estate management and development, and he's an at-large member. Next to Ron is Jan Rosinski, who is a property manager and represents the Centerville District and is secretary of the commission. Next to her is Bob Thornton, who is our chairman, who's in commercial real estate sales and leasing, and he represents the Lynn Haven District. Next to him is Dee Oliver, who is a funeral director, is at-large member, and our vice chairman. Next to me is Jeff Hodgson, who's in real estate management and represents the Beach District. To my left is Dave Weiner, who is in commercial sales, and David represents the Kempsville District. Next to him is David Redmond, who is in commercial real estate, represents the Bayside District. And finally, next to him is Barry Frankenfield, our Director of Planning. And please introduce your staff who are present.
Thank you, sir. To my left is Mr. Ed Whedon, who I usually have some disparaging or humorous comment, but he is so professionally attired today. I'm just thankful that he's here. So thank you, Ed. And on the planning bench, we have back there Kevin Kemp is the zoning administrator, Carolyn Smith, planning administrator, and the planners today are Robert Davis, Jimmy McNamara, Dr. Stephen White, Marshall Coleman, and Ashby Moss. And we also have our city attorney, Christine Gay is there somewhere. Oh, way back there. And we have our city attorney, Mr. Eisenlower. Thank you. Jonathan. All right, they keep coming in. Jonathan, you guys need to sit where I can see you. Jonathan Sanders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry. The next order of business is the explanation of the rules that we use to run the meetings. I've asked Commissioner Rosinski to explain these rules.
Thank you, Chairman Thornton. The Virginia Beach Planning Commission takes pride in being fair and courteous to all parties in attendance. It is important that all involved understand how the commission normally conducts its meetings. It's equally important that everyone treat each other with respect and civility. The commission requests that if you have a cell phone to please silence it or turn it off at this time. This is an abbreviated explanation of the rules. A complete set of the rules is located in the front of the Planning Commission agenda today. Following is the order of business for this public hearing. Withdrawals and deferrals. The chairman will ask if there's a request to be withdrawn or deferred from any agenda item. Consideration of these will be made first. Consent agenda. The second order of business is the consideration of the consent agenda, which are those items which the Planning Commission believes are unopposed and have favorable staff recommendation. regular agenda. The commission will then proceed with the remaining items on the agenda. Please note that action taken by the commission today are in the form of a recommendation to the Virginia Beach City Council. The final decision for approval or disapproval of any item will be made by City Council. The commission thanks you for your attendance, and we hope that your experience here today leaves you feeling that you have been heard and treated fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. The next order of business is to address those items to be either withdrawn or deferred. Please come forward if you have an item to either withdraw or defer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach Attorney representing 5073 Virginia Beach Boulevard on cases 1 and 2, which we request be deferred indefinitely. We expect to be back next month, but that will be determined in the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have an objection to this matter being deferred? Thank you. Any other items? Welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is R.J. Nutter, representing application number 6, Two Farms. We've requested indefinite deferral to continue to work with staff on that application, so appreciate your help. We have notified the neighborhood adjacent to it that we were deferring this application.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is there any objection to this matter being deferred? The chair has been made aware of item number 11. The Bickford of Virginia Beach is requesting a deferral. Is there any objection to that matter being placed on the deferred agenda? So those are the items that we need to defer. May I have a motion, please, to defer those items?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move that items 1, 2, 6,
Sure.
11 be deferred. Wait,
Wait, Jimmy's giving me a hand signal.
Withdrawal.
There's a withdrawal as well for,
I'm going to get that next.
sorry about that.
The council says we do it one at a time. Thank you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that items 1, 2, 6, and 11 be deferred.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Second from Jan.
Vote's open. Okay. By a vote of 11-0, the commission has deferred items 1, 2, 6, and 11.
The next item is withdrawal. The chair has been made aware that item number 16, Roy Wright and Jamie Short have requested a withdrawal of an application. Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the withdrawal agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move that item 16 be withdrawn.
Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Second from?
Second.
Mike. Mike did the second. Okay, thank you.
Vote's open.
Christmas flag.
Do it verbally.
Mr. Whedon, you'll have to do a voice vote individually.
Okay.
First time.
Jack?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mr. Thornton?
Aye.
Ms. Oliver?
Aye.
Hudson?
Aye.
Mr. Freeman?
Aye.
Mr. Weiner?
Aye.
Mr. Evans?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, the item 16 has been withdrawn by the commission.
Thank you. The next items we'll address are those that are to be placed on our consent agenda. The vice chair will handle this portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This afternoon, we have 8 items on the consent agenda. The first matter is, on our agenda is item number 5. This is an application of Miracel LLC for a change of zoning, a conditional R7.5 residential to P1 preservation on property located on Miracel Drive, north and south of Nemo Parkway. In the Princess Anne District 7, is there a representative for this application? Hello.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Members of the commission, it's a pleasure to be up here on this historical application, the last of its kind, to rezone this open space P1. It's part of Mirasol on behalf of Mirasol LLC, the developer of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. The chairman has asked Commissioner Dr. Kwanzi to read this into the record, please.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. This is a change of zoning conditional R75 residential to P1 preservation in the Princess Anne District, adjacent to Marisol Drive and adjacent to the north and south sides of Nemo Parkway. As Marshall described earlier, this is essentially a housekeeping element. A conditional change of zoning was granted in 2012, which rezoned the site from R5 residential, Ag 1 agricultural, and B1 neighborhood business to conditional R75 residential in order to construct 84 single-family dwellings. According to the recorded proffer number 4, the open space areas depicted on the site plan dated 2012 are required to be rezoned to P1 preservation. What happens is that the proffer stated once the final plat was recorded, the P1 preservation rezoning would occur, and that is essentially what's happening now. Staff finds it to be acceptable. The Planning Commission places it on the consent agenda.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item number 7, and this is an application of G. Kyle and Amanda B. Gift for subdivision variance, section 4.4B of the subdivision regulations on property located at 1325 Linwood Drive, District 5, Lynn Haven. Is there a representative for this application? Hello.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach attorney representing the applicant, both Kyle Gift and Leighton Roper, whose family has owned this property for almost 70 years, are in attendance this afternoon. Appreciate the item being placed on the consent agenda. Both conditions are acceptable to the applicant, and also appreciate Robert Davis's work on this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to this application being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Weiner to read this into the record, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Oliver. This is an application for a subdivision variance. City records indicate that the single-family dwelling was constructed on the subject site in 1945. In 1948, a plat was recorded that created a nearly 5.6-acre parcel. The original parcel was recorded prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act and the city's Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area Ordinance. Portions of the site are now heavily impacted by the Resource Protection Area. On May 22, 2017, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area Board approved a variance on the portions of the Chesapeake Bay Area Ordinance. The development of the 2 lots on this site, where the applicant desires the subdivided 5.6 parcel into 2 lots. Proposed lot B1 is depicted to be 4.5 acres and lot B2 to be lot 1A depicted to be 1.1, with a lot of 165 feet. The applicant is requesting a variance lot for lot B1. The comprehensive plan recognizes this to be in the suburban area. Staff has recommended approval and put it on the consent agenda.
Thank you. The next matter is agenda item number 8. This is an application of Starbucks Coffee Company for an alternative compliance on the property located at 501 Laskin Road, and this is in the Beach District 6. Is there a representative for this application? Hello, would you please state your name?
Lisa Sunderland. I'm the representative for Starbucks Corporation, and we thank you very much for putting us on the consent agenda, and we accept the 4 conditions.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any opposition to this item being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Hodson read this into the record.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. The applicant is seeking a special exception for alternative compliance to develop the site with a one-story Starbucks. The site is located in the Oceanfront Resort District. Development in this district follows the Oceanfront Resort District form-based code. The site fronts on Shopping 1 and Gateway 1 street frontages. As prescribed, the form-based code permits only development of a two-story mixed-use building type or a civic building type on the subject site. Thus, alternative compliance is needed to build the proposed one-story commercial building. As shown on the site exhibit, the proposed building is placed at the northeast corner of the site where it is set back 10 feet from Laskin Road and 20 feet from Baltic Avenue. Within the building setback, a 1,550 square foot patio seating area, bicycle parking, and non-fixed planters are proposed. Pedestrian entrances are provided on both street-facing facades. Trash, vehicular circulation, menu screen, pickup window, and parking are provided at the site's interior to the south. The proposed building reaches a height of 23 feet. This is just 2 feet shy of the minimum prescribed height for the mixed-use building type. The use of 13-foot-tall storefront windows enhances the perceived height of the building and provides increased facade transparency to the public sidewalk. This creates a built environment that is in scale with the pedestrian-oriented activities, current development, and future by-right development options. In staff's view, the proposal as submitted does satisfy the alternative compliance in form-based code. The Planning Commission agrees, and we have placed it on our consent agenda.
Thank you. The next matter is agenda item number 12. This is an application of Scarlett Dawn Winley as applicant and owner for conditional use permit for a home-based wildlife rehabilitation facility on property located at 3833 Jousting Arch, District 7, Princess Anne. Hello.
Hi,
Would you
I'm
please
Scarlett
state your-
Dawn Winley, and I appreciate that you put me on the consent agenda. I have read their conditions for this permit, and I do agree.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Kwanzi to read this into the record.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. This is a request for a home-based wildlife rehabilitation facility in the Princess Anne District at 3833 Jousting Arch. This is much like others we have seen before, and what necessitates the conditional use permit is a realization at the time of renewal of licensure that they need the conditional use permit. In this particular application, the applicant has 2 cages located in the backyard adjacent to a 6-foot-high privacy fence, wooden privacy fence. The cages themselves are slightly within the setback, and therefore they will be requesting a deviation to the required setbacks through the provisions of Section 221 of the zoning ordinance, which allows the city council to grant such deviations. Staff finds that this is compatible with the suburban area and recommends approval, and the Planning Commission places it on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Kwanzi. The next matter on the agenda is item number 13. This is an application of Infotech LLC for conditional use permit for business and vocational school on property located at 100 Constitution Drive, District 5, Lynn Haven. Hello.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Mr. Chairman, for the record, R.J. Nutter, representing the applicant. Happy to be on consent, appreciate it. We have worked out the last-minute issues with respect to the disclosure statement, so all that's in order. The conditions are acceptable, and we appreciate being on consent again.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Is there any opposition to this matter being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Ripley to read this into the record, please.
This is a office user within a 57,000 square foot office building at 100 Constitution Drive. It's a small office, they occupy about 560 square feet. They want to expand it to 225, and since they are a vocational school, they require a conditional use permit. They didn't have one, and so it was discovered, and so they've come in and applied for it. The staff recommends approval. It's consistent with the surrounding area, and it's compatible. And so we agreed, and we placed it on consent.
Thank you. The next matter is agenda item number 14, and this is the application of the City of Virginia Beach, and our zoning administrator, Kevin Kemp, is going to explain it and read it.
Thank you, Commissioner Oliver. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This proposed amendment will align our zoning ordinance with the recently adopted State Senate Bill 1282, which allows for small cell wireless facilities provided they meet the amended definition for that, which has two elements. The first is that the antenna and all the elements of the small cell wireless facility are less than 6 cubic feet. And the second is that all the components of that associated with that facility shall not exceed 28 cubic feet in size. Other items addressed in this amendment are that there are up to 35 locations that can be submitted under one application, that the concealment and landscaping requirements in the ordinance, the verbiage is moved from a shall to a should. It allows small cell wireless facilities on single-family homes and duplexes. And lastly, it requires that these facilities be removed if not used for 1 year. It should be noted that these apply for small cell wireless facilities attached to existing structures, and freestanding facilities still require a conditional use permit. Any questions?
Thank you. And the next matter is agenda item number 15, and this is an application of the City of Virginia Beach, and our zoning administrator, Kevin Kemp, is going to read it and explain it to us.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
This amendment will align our zoning ordinance with the recently adopted State Senate Bill 1559, and this is in regards to advertising for the Board of Zoning Appeals. This amendment says that the 30-day period for appeals to the BZA or the determination of the zoning administrator shall not begin until the property owner is given notice. This does not impact the way we currently operate. We do this already. This just syncs up the language with the state bill and our zoning ordinance, and staff recommends approval.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next matter is agenda item number D2. This is an application of DHW Joint Venture LLC for conditional rezoning. It's an R5D residential duplex and an L1 light industrial conditional A36 apartment on property located at 5836 Sandpit Road and nearby parcels, District 4, Bayside. Is there a representative? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. For the record, my name is Lisa Murphy, local attorney, and I'm here today on behalf of the applicant, DHW Joint Venture LLC. We truly appreciate all the work Ashby Moss and staff have put into this application. As you probably know from the staff report, there have been no objections from the Airport Authority, so we're happy to be able to move forward, and we appreciate being placed on the consent agenda today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any opposition to this being placed on the consent agenda? Hearing none, the chairman has asked Commissioner Redmond to read this into the record.
Mr. Chairman, this is an application of DHW Joint Venture LLC for a conditional rezoning on property located at 5833 Sandpit Road and nearby parcels in the Bayside District. The applicant proposes to develop a 382-unit apartment complex consisting of 7 four-story buildings, 5 townhomes, a shared indoor and outdoor recreation area, and 660 parking spaces. The buildings are designed to have a southern coastal look and feel. The 4-story buildings incorporate balconies, ample windows, and a host of high-quality building materials and finishes. This application is located in the Burton Station Strategic Growth Area and not only comports with the SGA plan, but is precisely the sort of quality, appropriate development that will benefit the community for many years to come. We are unaware of any opposition to the application. Staff recommends approval, and the commission concurs by consent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that was the last item on the consent agenda. I would like to move that we approve the consent agenda items number 5, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, and D2, that they would be approved.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Second by Jan. We ready to vote?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
I
sir.
need to abstain on item D2. I have a business relationship with one of the partners in that deal.
Thank you. Any other abstentions? We're ready to vote.
Okay, this will be a verbal. Mr. Wall?
Aye.
Crosby,
Aye.
Horsley,
Aye.
Ron,
Aye.
Jan,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Dee,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Okay. By a vote of 11 to 0, the commission has approved items 5, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, and D2 by consent, with the abstention also noted on D2.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the applicants who had a matter on the consent agenda for attending today's hearings. The items will be scheduled for hearing on City Council agenda, and we will now address the remaining items on our agenda. So I'd like to ask the secretary to call the first item, please.
Okay, applicant number 3, David C. Brosnas, an application for a conditional use permit, motor vehicle sales and rental, automobile repair, garage, bulk storage on property located at 73 South First Colonial Road, District 6 Beach. Do we have a representative here? If you could come forward and please state your name for the record,
I'm David Carl Brochus,
Okay.
owner of Martin's Auto Body Works.
and if you could explain your application, please.
Well, I came in to put up a new building. They told me I wasn't zoned to have a auto body shop on that property or bulk storage, so now I'm going through this process. And I've been there since 1978, and the business has been there since 1959, family-owned.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
And I went to the hearing this morning, and I heard everything, you know, that you want me to do, keep the grass maintained and prune the trees and whatnot. I agreed to all that, and someone mentioned about the privacy fence on the southeast corner, I think it was. I can put up a 50-foot privacy fence there if they need it. I'm willing to do that. And they also said plant some trees between the two warehouses. I'd much rather, if you would, consent to maybe putting up a 12-foot privacy fence instead of planting trees. It'd take longer for the trees to grow than me to put up a fence. And that's just to the warehouses where the people can't. I already got a solid fence there, but it's only as high as a chain link fence, which the city requires, because I tow vehicles for the city of Virginia Beach Police, and they require a chain link fence with barbed wire on the top. So I got that and the privacy fence on that side and across the back.
Any, Dee?
Show me the trees. I just want to make sure. Is that on the north side? There's a pointer right here, sir. Right there. Right there. There's a laser pointer.
Push the button or?
There.
This is where you're talking about planting
Oh, for the trees?
And it's between two warehouses.
There's a,
And
there
then
is,
there's trees all the way along here, all the way down to here. And this is a chain link fence, and this is, oh, there you go, and this is all Verizon parking lot. And they have put more of these trailers over here now. They're really filling the place in. I don't know why, but, and this is all green, this is all green, this is all green right up to there, trees, shrubs. And this is where I'd like to build the 12-foot privacy fence instead of putting trees there.
what's up there right now? Is it a privacy fence or?
It's privacy with a chain link.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. Chain link, it runs all the way around the property, all the way from, there's a gate right here, all the way around, down here, and all the way up to here is all chain link. And what I did is I made privacy inside that chain link all the way.
Thank you.
Jeff?
I got two quick questions. I think
Okay.
one of the concerns, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of it, and one of the conditions, number 7, it says, let me get my glasses on, vehicles that are in a state of obvious disrepair shall be stored on a temporary basis no more than 90 days per vehicle. And when we were looking at some of the photos, it seemed like it was obvious that some of them had been there for,
I understand that. I've done, got rid of 32 of them so far. I got another 15 to go.
great, okay. And he brought up a point that I'm not sure who to ask this to, but you said that the police require you to have barbed wire around your lot for protection of the cars that he's towing. But in here, we have a statement that says if at any time the fence is replaced, barbed wire is prohibited. So how do you handle that? This isn't for you, this is for,
We have heard that in the past that the police do require. I believe we've had other applications similar where they've had a barbed wire fence and a privacy fence.
okay.
It is, I will note that barbed wire fence is not prohibited in an industrial district the way it is in a residential or apartment. But if that's a requirement, we have in the past had the condition he has on the northern property line where there is a privacy fence and barbed wire.
But I don't know, do you need to make a change to this condition that says if he removes the fence, he can't put this back, but he's required to by?
Mr. Hodgson, we'll work that out between now and
Okay.
council, making sure we know the requirements for the police department.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Jack?
I just have one question. That was, I think it was discussed about the landscaping and that we were going to, it's conditioned to infill the existing landscaping on the perimeter, because right now that site is very well screened. I mean, you hardly know that it was there. I mean, it's very tucked away, and I'm glad that's being cleaned up. But I'm just curious about the.
Yes, in the break, staff actually crafted a condition. We weren't able to get it typed out, but I did hand a copy to Chairman Thornton that I believe covers this, that in the future, that buffer and that screening be kept at an acceptable
Maybe that was mentioned, I just missed it.
level.
Well, I haven't read it to you yet.
Okay.
You haven't heard it yet, so it's not your fault. I'm wanting to get the questions out of the way. Anything from this side of the dais?
I was just gonna make a motion after you read.
Here, did that answer your question, Jack?
Yes, sir.
Let me read this to you, and if you all are okay with this, it will be put into the record, because we didn't have a chance to amend the conditions, but it would supplement condition 15, and it would read as follows: the supplemental landscaping existing or proposed shall be installed and maintained to provide equal or greater screening from adjacent properties as the required Category 6 landscaping. And it's almost the same as what you're reading in here now, but the zoning administrator felt like this gave him a little more leverage in case they found that it wasn't exactly up to code. So if you're comfortable with it, if you'd like to see it, I'll be more than happy
Yeah,
to
I don't
hand
have a
it to
copy
you.
of it, but
So here, take this, and this is, what we want to do is substitute what's in this write-up with what you have there. Is that correct, Kevin?
That is correct, and the way that condition is worded just gives some flexibility to address the existing landscaping and what his intentions are if he has to replant it, and it allows the city to look at that and make sure it meets the intent of the ordinance.
Okay. So is that, are you okay
yeah, I'm
with that?
fine with keeping it up to grade and pruning everything, and
Okay,
I
good.
think that's what you're saying.
That's.
Just
well,
maintain it.
That's what we think we're
Well,
saying too.
Sorry.
Jack?
To maintain, meaning keep
Yeah.
the existing landscaping, not to take it out, but to.
No, I'm not gonna take nothing out.
Okay.
I'm cleaning it all up.
Okay.
And my question on the fence, could I build a higher fence for that privacy or not?
I would say that, how do we deal, is that part of the site plan review, or do we want to condition that now, or?
Well, the city has a maximum height for a fence of 8 feet in our ordinance, so that would have to be varied with the request.
Well, if I do an 8-foot, I don't need a variance, do I?
Right.
That's correct.
If you do an 8-foot,
Fence instead of planting the trees and
I
waiting.
think you can do that by right, but I don't know that that would be in addition to or in lieu of the landscaping. What it would, we want to keep the landscaping or the landscaping verbiage like we just gave you. And if you decide you want to build a fence, as long as it's your right, within by right, you can certainly build a fence.
Okay.
The fence may mitigate some of the need for additional landscaping, but they're going to look at the landscaping ordinance to make sure you're complying with it.
Okay, I'll put the fence up and then see what they say, I guess.
Well, that's your
I mean,
call.
that's all I can do.
Okay. You have any more to add, Kevin?
No, as long as the fence doesn't exceed 8 feet, you won't need a permit, so you can install that fence.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes, sir.
If there's no other questions, I did go by and I saw that you've already started to clean up the site, and it looked like you had somebody cutting grass back there, and I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 3.
Let me ask, Kay, do we need to close the public hearing before we move on the motion, or?
You can do so, yes.
Oh, we can just accept it now?
Well, you close the public hearing and then you get a motion.
Okay, well, we declare the public hearing closed, and I'd like a motion.
Anyways, we don't have any speakers against this, I assume.
I just have one more tiny housekeeping issue. On the condition with the fence, condition number 14, I would suggest we add in before, because right now it's conditioned at a 6-foot fence. If we put the word minimum in front of that 6-foot fence, it would allow him to go up to the 8-foot fence.
It's a housekeeping thing.
So, we have a motion to approve, make your motion, and we'll get a second and vote on it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 3, adding in the change for condition number 15, which you've been provided and the chairman read in, and inserting the word minimum in front of 6 foot. I believe that's on condition number 14.
Do I have a second for that? Second. Don, second? We're ready for the vote.
Ms. Hodgson?
Aye.
Ms. Horsley?
Aye.
Ms. Inman?
Aye.
Ms. Clonsey?
Aye.
Ms. Oliver?
Aye.
Mr. Redmond?
Aye.
Mr. Ripley?
Aye.
Ms. Rosinski?
Aye.
Mr. Thornton?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Aye.
Mr. Weiner?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Thank-
vote of
thank
11 to
you.
0. the
Thank you very much.
Thank
Number
you.
3, with adding change to condition number 15 and add the word minimum, item, condition 14 before 6 foot.
Okay, Ms. Secretary, call the next matter.
All right, the next item is item number 4, C&J Investors LLC for a conditional rezoning R10 residential to conditional PDH2 with underlane A12 apartment district on property located at 1725 and 1733 Salem Road, District 1, Centerville. And there is our representative.
Thank you, Ms. Rosinski. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach Attorney, representing the applicants. Jonathan Spate, Chris and Joe McCutcheon are all with us this afternoon, along with Bob Miller, whose firm did the preliminary stormwater analysis that was presented to staff before we were able to be, and reviewed before we were able to be placed on the commission's agenda. And so they're here to answer any questions that I'm not able to. I think that Mr. McNamara did an excellent job in the informal of briefing the commission on the application. The proposal for the townhome condominium units, all of which, and all the impervious surface construction is all outside, completely and totally outside of the floodplain on the property. The property has 65% open space as proposed, and that open space is high land in terms of, not being a swamp. It is in a floodplain for the most part, but it is dry other than when there's a flood. There are some upland non-tidal wetlands on the back of the property, but those too are dry. Most just the water table is high and there's some vegetation, but we're not going anywhere near any of that. None of that is being disturbed whatsoever with this proposal, with this application. The price points on these units, $225 to $250, $260 are the price points that we anticipate. We've provided connectivity. We've abided by the southern watersheds buffer. We do have backyards of the units that are in it, but that's it. No, and there's a specific proffer that no structures can be placed in those backyards. So I did meet about a month ago with the board of directors at South Hampton Salem Springs across the large ditch or canal between the two properties. I had the pleasure of representing the Dragas companies when that property was rezoned The Mons family had owned it prior to that time, and that zoning came along with the change in our ordinance that created these floodplains subject to special exceptions or special restrictions, excuse me. And there was quite a substantial floodplain variance that was a part of that approval. In fact, you can kind of see the floodplain here was floodplain here too. But mitigation was created on site as part of that. Obviously, we're not doing any of that. We're not touching the floodplain. And I'll also say that the meeting was an excellent meeting with the folks that attended. There was 6 or 7 community members on the board. And they were pleased that, you can't even, from these 2 units, which are the only 2 that are close to us, and you got their own buffer area plus the 50-foot where the small canal is located, you can't even see what's going on over here, for one thing. Prices are in line, a little bit better to what their units are currently selling for. None of their properties had any water in them in Matthew whatsoever. They did have some standing water in the street and things of that nature. So, yeah, they're what they expressed to me, and I encourage them to write to you all, because this thing, it does need to be addressed. I still don't to this day quite understand how we've got a 4-lane highway that was built by VDOT with a stormwater BMP for that public water that discharges into this canal, yet it's not owned by the state or the city, and I'm not sure that there's a drainage easement over it. It also drains development on the east side of Salem Road, and I believe it even gets some of the drainage from the Spence Farm development that's taking place. So, and because what they were telling me was that they would make phone calls about limbs and things being in the ditch. Of course, I walked the whole thing, and someone's been out and maintained it because it's not blocked at all now. But that they would call and be told, well, it's not our responsibility, we don't own it. And that's just not right. So anyway, our discharge and our BMP is totally outside the floodplain. We will either discharge in here or we will discharge into the large Salem Canal and will not cause anybody any flooding issues or flooding problems. We are 100% certain of that. Now, this morning, I also want to address Commissioner Wall asked a question, and I would like to point out we need to have a little bit bigger zoning maps in the write-ups. But on the north side of Southampton at Salem Springs is another A12 PDH. Across Spence Farm, on the other side of Salem Road, A12 PDH. And south of this, there's a undeveloped piece, and then on the corner, there's an A18 PDH. So there is A12, A18, and there's higher density by far than what this is at 6. So you're not showing it on here, but you got it. There's a residential development here that's a A12 PDH. There's an A12 PDH, and then down here there's an A18 PDH, and our density is 6.2 per acre. The Southampton's 5.2. You got 8 units per acre over here, and the PDH A18 down here has, I believe it's a little north of 12. It's not 18 units per acre. So it is absolutely in keeping in terms of density numbers, and it's in this case as environmentally sensitive as it can possibly be, as the BMP and all the development is completely outside, all impervious surface completely outside of the floodplain, and it will not cause any flooding. Now, what came up in the informal, two things that I've spoken to my clients about. With regard to Mr. Ripley's concern, these are two-story units. They're not 3-story units like Chimney Hill and some of the things you see on Shore Drive. So the profile is a lot lower because they're 2-story units. But what we would propose to do between now and Planning Commission, we can back these lots, these units, not lots, these units back 2 feet. We have plenty of extra setback here. So we can back those up 2 feet. And on this side, we will stagger the unit so that one is 2 feet further out than the other, so that you don't have that flat feel. We can also put banding on the back of the building to break up the 2 stories. We've got dormers already on those particular buildings. We added those already, and then we also can use some cedar shake, faux cedar shake, which we have on the fronts. We can do that on the back, break up the material with the faux cedar and the regular high quality vinyl. As per the other request, as far as doing hardy plank, the applicants are unwilling to do that because their price point and this area is different at $225 to $250, $260. And so the high-quality vinyl and the faux cedar, as well as the raised seam metal roof accents and the brick skirts at the bottom is all that they're amenable to doing as far as building materials are concerned. And that's, I don't believe there's any opposition. In fact, the folks I met with, they were pleased. They didn't have any complaints about what we were proposing. They were very happy that we weren't going anywhere in the floodplain. But they were concerned, and I encouraged them to write because of it's I've been doing this a long time, and I couldn't comprehend anybody suggesting that canal and its maintenance wasn't a city responsibility or a state responsibility, because we're putting all kinds of public water through that canal.
Ron?
Mr. Badon, I'm glad you put that on the record, because I think, I believe that, and hopefully some of the commissioners believe it as well, that the determination of who's responsible for that drainage canal is real important, because there's not just one person using it, one property using it, it's several. And I'm sure anybody that lived in there that was around that would look to the city because that they would be the logical person to be responsible. So for the record, I think hopefully city council will take note, city manager will take note, and planning staff will determine and make some recommendations so that it's really clear to the public. So thank you.
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and I've never come across a scenario where you've got undeniably all kinds of public water going through there. And again, I wasn't a party to those telephone conversations that they related to me, but yeah, I believe the city is maintaining it, frankly, but there shouldn't be any ambiguity about it.
Right. And I appreciate the modifications of the elevations. That's very helpful, and I think being able to stagger them and material and the band will probably, plus the berming and things that'll go on, that'll be good. I would like for them to reconsider the hardy plank, because I think hardy plank's not going to add that much more cost. But I hear what you say about price point, and you mentioned what did you just say?
225, 260, 225, 250.
Okay. Well, I can understand from a builder side why that's the case.
Yeah, and Salem Springs, their units are actually, what I was told was by the folks that theirs were selling for a less than that at this point, not tremendously less, but less than that.
But the vinyl that you're proposing is a cedar shake look?
It's a faux cedar shake vinyl, and then there is some high quality vinyl too. I mean, they're both are, but we would add to the amount of the faux cedar vinyl, and you can, on the color pictures that are in the report, you can see where the faux cedar vinyl is, and it is a very good look. I mean, people, folks at North End and even Shore Drive area, there's a lot of that the faux cedar. It looks very, very attractive. But that's the extent to which they're willing to modify the building materials to add more of the faux cedar.
Any additional questions from Mr. Badon? Dee?
I feel real strongly about that hardy plank, only because in all the developments that we have had coming forward, as you know, because you've been party to most of them, along with just the 7-Elevens, that we are trying our very hardest to change the look of a lot of our new developments so that they have a better appearance on.
I would say to you this, I'm just the messenger, but I would also say to you that where, especially, the quality of the vinyl product today is much better than it was on stuff that's 15, 20 years old, number one. But most importantly, it's the flat, long run of vinyl that tends to have a very poor quality appearance. When you break it up and you have smaller sections and it's, with banding and it's broken up, it does not look like the stuff that you or I would point to and say, that looks cheap. And so it isn't all about, and I'm not suggesting that there's anything that vinyl and hardy plank are the same, but it's really the way it's utilized. It's not, and the stuff that looks bad is where you have, and that's what Ron was talking this morning, 4 units flat across, and you got bands of vinyl going the entire length of the building. That's where you tend to have a lesser quality appearance.
Correct. And I guess that as we drive through on our city tours, we have seen lots of developments with the vinyl siding, and we watch it fall apart, basically. And it becomes an eyesore. It's hard to maintain.
When you also have it as a condominium, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every condominium looks great, but again, a lot of the stuff that's really aged poorly and hasn't been maintained are the fee simple townhomes, and that's why we don't approve any more fee simple townhomes, because the exterior of the condos are controlled by the association, and they have to do the replacement as it deteriorates. So there's a layer to the, it's not the generic one side. Every problem is across the board, applies to all of them. So again, I'm not trying to argue. I'm just giving you some perspective that it's not all vinyl turns out to look
like
bad.
Vinyl?
It's how it's maintained.
Any other questions for Mr. Burdon? Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we'll close the
No,
public.
no,
Nope.
we
had
have
some
one
opposition.
speaker in opposition.
Okay, sorry.
Vaughn Williams,
Forgive me.
and if you'll please state your name for the record, sir.
Name is Vaughn Williams. I live at 4468 Salem Springs Way. I've got an opposition in terms of the drainage. Now, I'll take this. Okay.
You have to hold it and push the button at it.
All right.
If you pick
okay.
it up and
The third, which one? No, next one. Right there. I've lived there for 15 years. I've seen we've had 2 floods, or almost floods, to our house. The last one, and I have a picture of it from Matthew, the water came down the street and ended up 6 inches from my front step. Okay? The canal going down in the back here, my wife and I, in 2005, were in our den. We heard an explosion. It was a lightning bolt that split a tree and put the tree inside that canal. It's blocking the canal now. There has been wisteria growing for the last 13 years, and that wisteria has caught onto that tree and onto the trees on both sides of the canals. So it is beginning to block that canal. Okay. Drainage-wise, when Matthew came along, the water from, because I can look out my back den window, the water from, if I could point this out, get the thing. The water, hold it up. Okay.
you got to turn it the other way.
All right, where's the
And
pointer?
then push the button. Yeah,
There
there
we
you go.
are. All right. My house is right here. Now, the water from the field back here was 2 feet underwater from Matthew. The water came down the street. Let's see, pick this up. Haven't worked for 20 years. I retired early. So it gets the corporation I work for, we didn't have these, not at that time. So the water came down the street, and it's on a 3-degree angle, and it came right towards my house. The water from the back, from the field back here, was 2 to 3 feet. It went to the canal, and the canal was 6 inches from the top. Now, the reason the water didn't run over the canal was because some of the water coming out of the field here went forward to the church parking lot and to where the church is. All right? So it didn't disperse totally off into the canal, coming back onto my side of the property. All right? When you're putting in the new housing, the water is not going to be able to disperse through the church with the church parking lot or not, because all of that area is going to be blocked. Now it's going to have to disperse to the side, which is a canal, and on the other side. All right? That hasn't been, and that canal is, if someone looks at it, will find a dead tree that's been in there for the last 10, 12 years, and it's blocked. Now, I tried to find out, because asking the board of directors, our association, they weren't able to find out. Supposedly, that canal is owned by an individual. They gave me a name of an individual and an address, which doesn't seem to exist. So I'm concerned that the drainage, no matter what they say, the front of it is going to be the buildings, but the back field, where it comes off of the canal. The other concern I have is they're asking for a variance to have the property run from Salem all the way back to the canal. Okay, well, there's wetlands back there, there's woodland back there. So that variance, either you can't build on, or in the future, someone's gonna say, we got a variance for that residential area, and we're going to be able to build on it. You know, I don't have a problem with it built with the variance for the residents going to the front of the place. But to have it change, the residential along the side of the canal, along the side of that little small creek, back to the canal, it runs. I wish I could.
Sir,
Yes.
your time is up. Would you
Okay.
wind this up just in a couple?
Okay, I'm just saying, there's a drainage problem, and no one has really looked at it, and no one's looked at the canal that is now being filled with trees and debris and wisteria.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did we have anybody have any questions? for-
I'm sorry, anybody have any questions? You don't have to leave the dais yet. Any questions? Don't see any. Okay, stand by. We might have some for you. Okay, Mr. Burdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly appreciate Mr. Williams coming. The couple important points. I think on the last point that Mr. Williams is misunderstanding what's in the write-up there. There is all of the area, and Mr. Williams's property is here, and this is as far back as development goes. This will be the BMP. We are not seeking and cannot, under this rezoning, all of the property from this point back, which is about where there's a shed, if you look at the overhead aerial, there's a little shed behind the church right here. There you go. That's as far back as we are going with any development, and the floodplain is back here, where Mr. Williams is saying he saw water standing. I'm not sure the depth, but water, and that's where the water would be. That's where the floodplain is, and that's where it was flooded, and we're not going anywhere near that. Everything we're doing, including the BMP, is outside of the floodplain. So, and there is zero. All this is in perpetuity unless City Council changes it. Remains natural open area. Nothing can be built on it, and that cannot happen. So, I'm really not 100% sure what the misunderstanding concerns, but there's nothing that will be happening with this piece of property at all, other than essentially from here forward and the BMP behind it, again outside of the floodplain. And the water from the development has to be treated by the BMP, and the rate of discharge and volume of discharge into the receiving body, be it Salem Canal or the smaller canal, cannot exceed pre-development rate of discharge. So under the new stormwater regs, which are much more stringent than what Salem Springs developed under, or the property to the north of it developed under, there's really not any chance that this is going to cause flooding over there. But the other point that Mr. Williams made, I've already addressed and totally agree with. And I didn't see the tree that was down, but the members of the board were very clear and that they were concerned about the wisteria and the blockage of that canal, and we share that concern that should be addressed, but we're not the makers of that issue.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Ripley?
Could Mr. Miller come up, and he's the engineer, right?
Sure.
Maybe, I want him to come down here and not work.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you.
Afternoon, Mr. Miller.
Bob Miller, professional engineer. I thought Mr. Verdon became quite a good engineer just a minute ago. In fact, I was
But
told
you-
by my clients that I was no longer necessary.
You performed a preliminary drainage
sir.
study. Can you
Yes.
talk about that? And can you talk about, because Mr. Williams seems to be, and rightly so, concerned about drainage.
Right.
How are you going to handle the drainage, or will the water also be designed to stay on site before it would?
Yeah,
drain off?
we're required, as I think all of you all know, to now do the preliminary drainage studies, and we've got to look at the 10-year storm, the 25-year storm, the 50-year storm, and the 100-year storm.
Which is brand new.
Which is fairly new. I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
it's in the, I think I was the first one back with the Indian River Road project that we had, so. Yeah, and what we do is obviously subordinate ourselves to DSC and the Public Works people to make sure that the engineering is done in a way that there is acceptable to them. The site, the current site, I once shot myself in the eye with this thing. There is no BMP for the church and the existing parking lot. That was done in probably the 70s or 80s, and it wasn't done by me, but whoever did that, there was no BMP. So we have a BMP now, and this is actually going to be a dry BMP, which means that the water table in that particular part of the site, now down further, the water table is much higher as you get down to the Salem Canal, but up in this area, it's not that far down. Excuse me, it is further down. So we will have a dry BMP. During a storm event, it will fill with water, and we have accounted for everything up to the 100-year storm, and my engineers, the 10-year storm is a slight reduction. The 100-year storm is about 11% reduction of the runoffs that are going off of there right now. So we have reduced the runoff by being able to retain it in this BMP. The water will come directly to that BMP, all the water from our site.
So the water will rise up to a outfall and then be able to spill into that?
Well, and it actually, yeah, I love this
How it'll
word.
work.
I love engineers. Multi-stage weir. Doesn't that sound important?
It does.
Let me explain that to you. No, I'm not going. But what we do is we drain off we'll have a hole in the weir. It'll be a riser pipe, and one of the pieces will allow for the 10-year storm. As the storm perhaps gets higher, up to including the 100-year storm, there'll be a different outlet structure. But it will allow the outlet over a period of time, not during, in most cases, during the storm event. We will actually not be discharging. It'll be filling up the BMP.
What do you think it would look like if Matthew had occurred and this development had already been there? Do you think the water would have drained back into that property like that, like
Yeah.
we saw?
You want to explain this multi-stage weir again?
No, just, what do you think it would look like?
What happens is that when a storm like Matthew hits, there's so much intensity of rainfall. Just take our typical, more typically, we have a August thunderstorm where we get a couple inches of rain in an hour. I mean, it's just super intense. That water is going to end up sitting in these driveways and so forth, or in these, drive aisles, not in the driveways, because the system is not, the inlets don't take in that big a storm event that fast. Over the period, once the storm event or a Matthew occurs, this would be full of water. There might be water in some places where the storm drain inlets are, but it'll be we're actually, all the finished floors here are going to be 2.5 feet above the FEMA elevation, so nothing will be, even in most cases, in the driveway. But undeniably, there will be water out on the street. There's water everywhere when an event like that happens. There's no place for it to, you just can't suck it into the systems. The pipes aren't big enough, the inlets, they're not going to take it in that fast. And I forgot Mr. Wall was here. He could explain multi-stage weir to you.
I think Ron's concern was is not going on to adjacent properties.
It is not. I mean, obviously, yes, it's not. Right now, it's going kind of hit or miss wherever it wants to because there's no BMP system. It's just set up to drain directly to that canal.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Miller? Thank you.
There are no more speakers.
Okay, well then we would close the public hearing and we would talk amongst ourselves. Anybody have any thoughts to bring forth? Jeff?
Well, I hope this application brought some awareness, which I think it did, to this ditch that's a mystery to everybody. And hopefully now we can kind of get to the bottom of who owns it, who needs to maintain it. And, that'll be a better situation moving forward. I can also say the developer has built a number of houses in my neighborhood, and they are top-notch products. I kind of wish he'd have built my house. But he does a very, very fine job at the products he does build. I understand both your comments about the hardy plank, and I do agree with Eddie, too, that when you have shorter runs on a house, it's much less noticeable than when you have a whole side of a unit or a whole back of a unit done in one linear vinyl. So I'm willing to support this application.
Mike?
Yeah, I want to support what Eddie had to say also about the maintenance aspect of it, representing a lot of condominium associations and HOAs. I can tell you that with the maintenance responsibility on the association to for the exterior of the structures, it tends to get attended to because there's money put aside. There's a program for maintenance that encompasses all the buildings, and it's not on a one-by-one basis as it would be in a townhouse community where you're depending on everybody putting aside their own money and stepping up at the right time and take care of the property. So I think there'd be some consistency and quality of maintenance that would allow for the use of the materials that he's proposing would be fine.
Jan?
I have a
and Ron.
question. Do we need to put something in the conditions that they're amenable to making the backs that back up to Salem Road
Yeah.
offset as opposed to?
This does not have any conditions. It's a conditional rezoning.
Okay.
If I may, we want to put on the record that we will make those revisions in conjunction with staff and be happy to share it with any commission members before we go to city council. So staff will be able to share them with you, the changes that we spoke of on the rear of those units along Salem Road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ron, do you have
No, I was going
anyone else have anything to say? Karen?
So I wonder, I don't know if I can ask Bob a question or not still in relation to the engineering that he was talking about.
I think so.
Okay. So it's just mostly in relation to the gentleman speaker who came up in opposition, or I think perhaps more concerned. To what degree, because this was not engineered to address stormwater management previously,
Right.
is what I understand you're saying.
Correct.
All right, and that the varying weir, and I'm not sure if that's, I understand it completely, I don't know if that's the terminology, but the weir and the BMP or the dry BMP are
Yeah.
going to significantly address the site in a way it hasn't been addressed before, is what you're
Correct.
saying.
Yes, ma'am.
So he'll have some degree of relief from whatever he was seeing back there.
Well, I thought, yes, on our property,
On
if
your
there were to
property.
be a flood, we're outside the floodplain.
Okay,
So that
what
water,
he's been witnessing in terms of the standing water on the site during storm events like Matthew will not be to that degree, because you
Correct.
have something on the site addressing it now.
right, on our site.
Okay, on your site, that's
Yes, ma'am.
exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all I had for you, but I did have an additional question, or point of discussion. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So, how can what this application is doing affect, I don't know if it can, so just forgive me if it's an ignorant question, but to what degree can what's being done on the site affect knowledge of the ownership of that ditch? That is not necessarily a part of this process, but affecting, that it's been a part of our discussion, so I'm wondering how this application can affect ownership of that ditch. Maybe not at all. So if that's the case, I just wanted to know.
That sounds
Mr.
like
Chairman,
a
I'll
very
answer.
question.
We will, in fact, if you give me the address, we'll do it.
So
Almost
continue due
momentarily.
diligence to discover
No,
that?
we will report it to Public Works and make sure it's investigated and followed up.
Mhm.
And more than likely, it would be appropriate that they clean it out.
Right, because
So
of
we
the
could,
problems
you know,
he's
we'll,
having. so-
we'll handle that.
Okay.
Were you talking about, in your question there, about maintenance or ownership?
Ownership, because
Well,
once we determine ownership,
ownership's
we
a
might be
title.
able to
That's a
determine whether or
title.
not it's the private owner who has to
That's a real
maintain it
estate
that
title
way. Yeah.
issue.
Mhm.
It has to be researched in the title records, deed records, and find out who owns it.
We agree with Mr. Burdone. You want to put that down? That more than likely, the city will have some responsibility. We'll look into it, and we'll, if you want to, we'll get back to you. But
I'm
it's
just
totally
looking at-
appropriate, we'll handle it.
Dave had it first.
Oh, go ahead.
Dave,
I was going to move approval of application.
so we'll let
I
Dave
just, I've
make
got
a
one
point.
question, since we're on the ditch question. He was addressing that the tree had fallen in the canal, and that obviously is going to cause a problem
Continued.
upstream and downstream, and as the ditch feeds into this canal, obviously it's privately owned. How does that get addressed? Does
Same
that-
way, we're gonna,
Okay,
we're gonna,
got it.
We're
Okay,
gonna
I just-
address it.
I mean, that's just obviously a, you know,
Okay, Dave?
I'll second the motion
Dave?
that Dave made.
I move approval of the application.
Motion made
I'll
to
still second the
approve, and a
motion.
second by Mr. Inman.
We're gonna try the machine again in a minute.
We're doing the machine.
He's-
I need,
Vote's open.
hold on a second. I need to abstain on this. I have the developer as my client, one of my clients.
I also need to,
Just press the button.
I know, but I just had to state why.
Vote's open.
I need to abstain too. I'll just
And
hit,
since it's not a conditional zoning, representative represented, he would make those changes, and that's sufficient. Okay.
Mr. Thornton, the reason for your abstention?
my company is working on this project. We're representing the landowner.
Thank you.
Vote's open, go ahead.
Back in business.
I vote of 9-2, application of C&J Investors has been approved, with the abstention so noted.
The vote would be 9-0
Zero
with two abstentions.
Okay, sorry. Long day, rough day.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 9, enclave at, I guess that's Princess Anne BC LLC for conditional rezoning AG1 and AG2, architectural to PDH2 planned unit development, R7.5 residential on property located at 2754 North Landing Road, 2804 North Landing Road, and eastern 1.2 acres of 2808 North Landing Road, District 7, Princess Anne. Now, do I read both of them together? Okay. And then item number 10, which is an application for enclave of Princess Anne Homeowners Association, Inc., and the enclave at PABC LLC for a modification of proffers on property located at the north side of North Landing Road, 2,700 feet west of West Neck Road, District 7, Princess Anne. And the representative for these applications.
Thank you, Jan. There's a lot to have to read. For the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach attorney, representing the applicant as well as the association, the homeowners association. The applicant, or Steve Bouchard, one of the applicants, is here along with a couple of his employees. This is, and I think I want to first of all thank Dr. White. We've been working on this for quite some time. It got delayed because of the preliminary stormwater study. We would have been here many months ago. We were in the process when that kind of came up for the first time. So we worked through that as well, and that's why it's been a little bit delayed. But Stephen did a wonderful job of summarizing what is a complicated application to describe. But the simple way to describe it is, in my view, is it's a smart growth application. That's exactly what it is in my view. The history of the project, I've represented totally different developer back in 2011 when the Phase 1 was approved, and they didn't develop for a number of years, and the Bouchards acquired the property and proceeded with the subdivision of Phase 1 and development of Phase 1. I will note that they have kind of slow-walked it since this. They immediately, a couple of years ago, started trying to assemble the properties that are before you, and tried to also assemble, the additional property that is to the east that we'll talk about. But they recognize that there's just a very small, limited area there that's outside of, or it's within the catcher's mitt that can be developed, and everything outside of it, as far as residential, is pretty much, not going to happen. It's going to remain open or have some level of industrial development compatible with operations between Fentress and Oceana. So they've been working on this, and because of the desire and frankly, I think the wisdom of putting this together, they have slow-walked the development of the first phase, so they would have the ability to control the amendment so that this all could come together as one development. And the reason I think it's smart growth, and I think it's fairly evident, is that otherwise you have a piece of property that's going to develop separately, that's going to have access coming off of North Landing Road in perpetuity. You've also got the scenario with stormwater, which you heard Ms. McIntyre talk about this morning, about how the small little infill pieces are much more difficult to deal with, whereas here we don't. We have a larger development when you put it all together with much greater BMP capacity, much more open space and ability to handle stormwater, excuse me, and you also have a lot more people paying for its maintenance, who are all living in a homogeneous, similar community that will appreciate over time to a much greater extent and be a very viable and beneficial neighborhood whose residents will serve the commercial down here in the courthouse area. And again, we have very, very, very limited amount of potential new rooftops in this area. We've obviously approved the apartment complex north of the Harris Teeter, but if you look at that map that was up there this morning, there's just really not much else. And we've got a really beautiful VA medical facility that's going to be built next to this piece of property. I think starts construction next year. The product is selling for $450,000 on average in Phase 1, which is absolutely excellent. And we've got an area with all kinds of open space, not only on the property, but everywhere around us down here. We've got the Recca Mecca to the north. We've got Princess Anne Park. We've got 3 golf courses within, a mile. We've got Kellum High School across the street, basically, with all of its facilities. And we've got a trail system on this piece of property, and we're adding a tot lot with this application. So, again, we think it's just wise and smart growth, very limited, and really that's all we've got. There's not much else left down here that's available to be developed residentially. So we do appreciate the concern about the traffic on North Landing Road, although I'll say I was in the community this morning. I was in there a couple of weeks ago. This morning was 8:35, 8:40. I pulled right out, didn't have to wait at all. But it doesn't mean that there isn't traffic. This is the country to a lot of people's way of thinking, especially people who've been there for 30 or 40 years. And there's more traffic because a lot more people that are going to Great Bridge, Southern Chesapeake, and even Blackwater, that's the way they go. And come back, as Mr. Horsley said this morning. But the capacity is there. We had anticipated that NEMO would be built. Mr. Frankenfield's predecessor, he was a big proponent of NEMO being extended all the way out. And I'm not saying that Mr. Frankenfield isn't, but and the city owns all that property now. They own the Brown Farm. So at some point, I would suggest, and I don't disagree with anything that Rick said this morning, but I would suggest that the city at some point is going to want to reap some benefits from their investment in that property, and they're going to see some development out there, which you got to get to it, and that means extending Nemo Parkway. So it's going to come. I had seen a VA plan for the medical facility that had 2 entrances, one at the east end, one at the West End, all on Nemo, because you can't come in off West End because those are wetlands the city is preserving. But I'm told that that's been reduced now to one entrance. But what I had seen initially, it looked to me as if the road would be built to within basically 50 yards of our entrance, which to extend to the extra 50 yards wouldn't cost much at all. But apparently that's no longer the VA medical facility plan. So, but, and we're not, these units in Phase 2 would not even be under construction for at least a year, and because that's how long it takes to get through the process. And so it's a multi-year process. As you can see, 2011 when this thing originally began for Phase 1. Again, all the homeowners in the community have signed a letter. They all are support of the proposals, support of the modifications that are involved, support of the tot lot that's been added, and with that, I mean, I think Dr. White did an excellent job this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions and deal with the things that you all might wish me to deal with.
Any questions of Mr. or Jeff?
Is a tot lot a fancy word for a playground?
Yes, but as it's in the proffers, it's with equipment, and we proffer the amount of money, that minimum amount that would be spent. But it's equipment that's age appropriate for those under the, I believe it was the age of either 12 or 10. I apologize, I don't remember. But it's a playground, but it's for very young children, not for older kids. And I believe we specified the age appropriate in the proffer agreement. 10. That's what I thought.
Other questions?
Mr. Bordon, can you point out on the, I'm sorry, you have to say my name.
Karen?
Can you point out on the site layout where the tot lot is, and can you provide me with the square footage of the tot lot?
The tot lot is in this area where the, it's using a part of what was original open space, and also where the cul-de-sac would have been under the Phase 1 proffers. As far as the dimensions, Bob, do you know can you scale that for me? Oh, well, so much for getting me. I believe that it looks to me like it's probably, from scale, it looks like it's probably about, I'm guessing 70 by maybe 65 by 80, something like that. Steve, do you? Yeah. So it looks like, just scaling, it looks like it's wider than a 50-foot lot, and it's not as deep. So I'm guessing it's somewhere around 60 to 75 or 80.
So that's a B and P it's also adjacent to?
Yeah, this shows the fenced-in tot lot with access to the sidewalk, which Dr. White described. We've got sidewalks and walkways all throughout the open space and throughout the property. We've connected this to the sidewalk here, down. We've also got a crosswalk that crosses over as well, but that's a fenced-in area. It's shown as a fenced-in area.
I had an additional question.
Go ahead.
When you get to the end of the roadway that connects to North Landing down this way,
down here.
okay, there is discussion, I believe, in the staff report. I know during the discussion earlier today or at another point in time, that was going to be considered additional open space at the closure of the roadway. At the point of the closure of when that juncture occurs, that was going to occur.
And that's still the case.
It's still the case.
Change that.
But that requires the closure of the roadway for that to become additional usable open space, or is it treed right now? I think it's treed, isn't it?
Well, this part is already treed open space that belongs to the association. Okay, they're part of this because this part of their treed association property is where the road cuts through. So, but the part that previously would have been closed started here and went all the way down. Now, what the proffers provide is that this section from here down will be closed. In other words, this has been designed with the curve radius such that it meets all the city traffic standards. So from this, there'll be basically curved here, and all of this would become closed right away, added to the open space. The association would maintain it. So it's the same principle as existed previously. It's just a lesser amount.
But it won't be usable open space until the closure of the road. Will it be any kind of usable open space is what I'm asking for now.
This is open space, but, this part
Right.
here, but, which was always there. This doesn't change the road being road until Nemo Parkway is in place, but all that was anticipated previously still is the case. This frontage out here on North Landing Road of the property will not have any access other than the city will be able to access it to maintain our contractors to maintain the BMP, depending upon who's doing it. I would also want to point out, we've also put landscaping along here so that any, people turn around and cul-de-sac at night or whatever, the lighting will be screened so no one's headlights are in anybody's back. And we didn't do that here because there is nothing to the east that would well, actually, I take that back. We did. All right, we put landscaping there and we stubbed the street. There's no house. Well, maybe there is a house back here. I apologize. So we've landscaped here and we've landscaped here in order to shield any lighting from anybody's vehicle onto anybody's property at night. So that's clear.
Jack,
You may have mentioned this, but what is the occupancy of all of these properties sold, or are they?
Single-family residential
Single-family.
for sale.
They're still for sale. Some of them, not the new ones, but the existing Phase 1 properties. Are they all?
They're not all developed yet.
It's not all developed yet.
Not all-
Okay, I was
no,
out there.
They're
I
still
can't remember
vacant,
what-
still vacant lots that that the applicant owns, and one of the principals of the applicant owns, and, but the homes that have been built have, I think there are 2 or 3 that are in queue for closings, but,
Right.
they're not moving. I think we haven't rushed to put those houses in because we wanted to get this all wrapped up, first. So they've slow walked the development. There's been, very good demand and very good pricing on the
I
homes.
did see the pricing was, I think that the highest was about 450, between 4 and 450. I believe.
Correct, and the more recent ones and the ones that are under contract are 450 and above. And we also have added an access for this home as well, so that will access here. And again, I don't know if I'll lay good odds I'll still be around, good Lord willing. This road's going to be closed. I'm not buying Rick's idea that it could be decades. I think Nemo Parkway will get built sooner rather than later, and I'm not even convinced that it won't get extended with the VA hospital. But that may be correct. There may be such small amount of traffic that generates that one entrance is enough for it. But North Landing Road traffic, this adds, as Rick said this morning, it's a de minimis amount of traffic to North Landing Road. And moving it over to Nemo Parkway isn't going to change the dynamic as far as the traffic on North Landing Road either.
Mike?
Eddie, just to clarify, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but that you've kept talking about how that section of the street from that right there, that's it, that you keep referring to it as going to be closed. What I was hearing this morning is it was not only going to be closed, it was going to be removed and turned into whatever the association wants to, but and something
That's
about.
exactly right. It will be, the proffers require, unless the city wants to change them, the proffers all along had required that the road would be closed. I mean, frankly, when this was rezoned, there was actually conversation about the fact that within a short period of time, maybe as little as, 5 or 6 years, Nemo Parkway was going to be extended further to the west. In fact, the Kempsville, the church had bought the Brown Farm. There was a lot of moving parts, but there was a discussion at the time and again, Barry's predecessor was a big proponent of getting that road built out there. So that's one of the reasons why we did that. Now, Rick pointed out another was early on, there was a part of this application that was later jettisoned that had a daycare as well, but that never got to the Planning Commission. So there was really a consensus that it made sense to create this in such a fashion that all of the access would eventually occur, and it still exists in my view. It still makes a whole lot of sense because I'm absolutely believe that Nemo Parkway will get extended, and all the traffic coming from the eastern part of Virginia Beach going to Chesapeake, and folks coming from Chesapeake to the eastern part of Virginia Beach, since we're not going to have a southeastern, is going to be coming through Nemo Parkway to General Booth and up, or straight on down to Sandbridge. And that turns North Landing Road into a, other than the Kellam High School relocation, which also happened in between, but still a pretty bucolic, road.
Well, I appreciate that dissertation, but that really wasn't my question.
I'm sorry.
My question was, is that road, that section of road, when Nemo Parkway goes in, is it going to go away?
Yes,
I mean,
it will go
easement
away.
is going to go.
It will
be gone.
That's exactly what was, exactly what was
Well, it's
anticipated. It will
different-
be.
That's the difference between putting a barricade up and
No,
saying,
it
"Don't
is
go
to be,
here
it is to be removed. It is to be closed and removed. I'm
Right.
sorry, could have done that in 2 words. Sorry.
Mr. Horsley.
And who's paying for that?
At the time, it would have been the city, and that's still what it is. I mean, there's no, it is not the burden of removing the road, because the developer would be gone. Now, if the property was under development, the idea would have been, hey, build the road, and we don't ever even put this road in to start with. And if we're still involved, maybe we'll take it out. But if the units are all sold and the developer's gone, it's going to be on the city unless the association has the money to, which I don't think that's likely.
Don?
Just, I don't really have a question, but this whole thing has gotten stirred up because back when this originally was approved, there was a lot going on with like Eddie said, with the purchase of the Brown Farm by the church, and then there was an idea that Kellam High School was going to go down there, and there would be a big need to put Nemo Parkway in there. This came along about the same time, and really, I think when they pulled the school out of there and relocated the school to West Neck, that kind of nixed it for temporary. But I agree with Mr. Burdon. I think that Nemo will be put in eventually, because the city's sitting there with that huge block of land there, that something's going to happen to it. I like to keep it farmland as long as we can, but something's going to happen to it eventually, and there will be a need. And then the whole scenario that these original zonings were approved is going to come true. That road will be cut off, and the people on North Landing will be happy that's happened. So, the amount of development that's occurring now, I think, is very minimal to the amount of traffic it's going to put on North Landing. And I still attend, even though Rick says it's not. It's pretty crowded to me. North Landing is right now, but I know you've got your way of figuring out things. So that's kind of the way it is, and just something got turned around with, and I think it was back when Kellam High School got changed from the idea of putting it on the Brown Farm to West Neck, and I think that's what changed it and took the emphasis off of Nemo Parkway. So.
Which also took a few hundred. Well, it was over 100 homes that would have been on where Kellam High School is, too.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
But and certainly there's more traffic on North Landing than there is on Blackwater Road. There's no doubt about that.
We don't need to get into that. we've got a lot of there. But the problem is that a lot of these roads, the traffic doesn't originate on the road. It originates far, just like Princess Anne. That originates in Knott's Island, a lot of it. And Blackwater is the same thing, There's a lot of development occurring down south, and the people employed up here, and they travel these roads, So.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Burdon? Okay, with that, let's close the public hearing and have a motion, some comments, some questions. Dee?
Speakers?
Oh, speakers against. Today's not my day to
There are
find.
no other
There are no more. Okay, we're good. We're safe. Dee?
I do have a question. I'd like, just for clarification, to ask Rick a question again about the future of Nemo Parkway. Because the way I understood it or heard you speak about it today, that it was definitely going to go to the Veterans Center. But for them to spend another, what was it, $3 million to connect to this development was probably not going to happen anytime soon at all. Or connect all the way to the end of North Landing. Will you just go over that one more time?
Sure. Rick Lohman, Public Works Traffic Engineering. That's a good slide that come up. We took a look at it, and what Mr. Bordone was talking about as far as the second entrance, the Veterans Care Center wanted to put a second entrance further down, so it would have dragged Nimmo Parkway a little bit further down as well, to tie into that second entrance. But Nimmo Parkway is a limited access or access-controlled facility, so it only needed one entrance. So because it's landlocked, it's guaranteed one entrance, and that's all it needed. So the second entrance, they gave up on, and so they're just going to have the one entrance, which is 650 feet from where West Neck and Nimmo Parkway come together. And that's where that, can you go back to that estimate? That's where that estimate came from. You could see alternative A, 650 feet, and we came up with the estimated cost of $2.2 million. We also took a look at if you extended it all the way to the enclave, which was not part of the original scope, but because there were discussions, we did it and we scoped it to see how much that would cost. That would be $5.5 million. So it's an extra $3.3 million to extend the road to the enclave to basically get those few trips from North Landing over to Nimmo, which again, if you're doing the math, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do it just for that reason. Now, when you do extend it all the way to Lansdowne Road, when Lansdowne gets extended, develop that Brown Farm property, and when you do extend it ultimately to North Landing, and that's part of Nimmo Parkway Phase 3, then obviously we'd switch the access over like the proffer state, and the city would, as the proffer state, the city would, demolish the roadway and make the connection.
But as of today, the likelihood of that road extending to the enclave is 10 years, 15 years?
Again, it would be past the enclave. It would be it would finish
have to go
Nimmo
all the
Phase
way.
2. Barry may know as well as I do, but it's really a matter of timing when that development comes online.
Because the crystal ball's in the shop. Right.
Let me answer. All we can tell you is what is funded today. What is funded today is the two-lane road to the Veterans Facility. The Master Transportation Plan shows extensions, four-lane road, all that kind of stuff. There's no funding in place. There's no funding discussed. But the ITA expansion, the approval of the ITA plan, and any other thing would, I believe, it's not on the Master Transportation Plan because we're not going to do it at some point. It's on there because it's designed for the future of the city. So that's all we can tell you. It's not funded. It's on the Master Transportation Plan.
So
We're not going to tell you 5 or 10 years.
Karen.
I don't have anything else, Rick, for you.
I
Thank
do.
you.
Can I?
Do you? Yeah, you
Rick.
jump in.
Can I say,
Yes.
Rick? I'm kind of torn here because the first phase, the people that purchased the land said that it was going to come to, Nimmo Parkway was going to come to the enclave, but you just said, just a second ago, it will get extended when Lansdowne gets extended.
Well,
is that on the books yet? Is that funded?
That would be Lansdowne Phase 3. No.
Okay, that's not funded either.
No. Stephen, if you have that map.
I know where, well, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know if he has it, but no, and it's going to be driven by when the development picks up. I mean, there's no reason to extend a road.
I agree, but
chicken and the
the
egg.
way you said it, when Lansdowne gets extended, is that even, I know it's on the books, but I mean, Phase 3, but that's not even funded either.
No, sir.
Okay.
And the question, or what you said about the Phase 1 people expected that Nimmo would be built, it was never, the extension of Nimmo Parkway was never for the enclave. The extension, the way it was written was, when Nimmo is built, it would connect to there. It's
okay.
not a matter of, hey, it's going to be built because we came along, and because of us, Nimmo would be built.
I see. Okay, that cleared that up.
So, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything more?
No, that's
Any other?
fine.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, the meeting is closed to the public. Do we have any comments, questions? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I just wanted to say something.
Okay, sure.
Because we've spent a lot of time on this roadway issue, and I'm concerned because there's other aspects of this development that also need us to bear witness to them. So for instance, because this road is hypothetical somewhere down the line, and while I get the fact of capacity of traffic on that roadway, all of that is of concern, but that's not for me paramount. What's for me paramount is the fact that That road is not going to happen, and therefore that open space is not going to happen. And we have negligible open space on the property in and of itself right now. And having driven through that and seen what 5-foot side yard setbacks do to a development that, like that, tucked away onto a little, sandwiched onto a small piece of property, due to the sense of open space, let alone having usable open space. So while I'm not averse to the development, I think it needs to go in there, absolutely. I just think if hardy plank can be an issue for us in terms of the quality of development, then also should be the density on a development and whether or not internal to the development there's a sense of space. And in this area, this part of the city, a sense of space is key to part of the development that actually fronts on North Landing Road, which is where the larger properties are. So my thinking is not no to the development, but maybe we could just do better. Lose 3 lots and get some extension to those side yard setbacks, so we have some internal to the development open space. If we can't get more active open space because of the nature of the land, which I would really love to see, I think we could get a better quality design. And for me, that's a part of my responsibility, is to see if I can make that happen, not to get in the way of the development itself, but to see if I can provide for a better quality development in an area that's sensitive to that kind of development. And so we either have really dense, really tightly packed, really kind of like gratuitous development, or we have smart growth, and we've used that word, we have smart growth that is quality for that area. And I think for the Princess Anne District, in that area of the Princess Anne District, that has to be the paramount discussion, especially when we're not going to provide access roadways that make the development amenable to the rest of the area for a long, long time. So that's where I'm hanging my hat. I'm not as, we spent so much time on the traffic that we're almost exhausted by it. And so to me, then, the thing that's been most important to me in my discussions of the development is only going to get a little bit of time, hence my stridency in getting it out there to you, because I want you to take into consideration, asking this developer to just do better for us. Not to say no to them, but say, do better.
So what I hear you saying is, if you knew for a fact that road was not going to ever connect to a Nemo Parkway, that was never going to be there, you're not comfortable with the way this is done because there's not enough open space.
Right, whether it's internal to private property or external and on the development itself, yes.
So
I think that's a good summation.
So that's a good place to start a discussion. What do the rest of you think about that? Does anybody feel as strongly about it as Karen? Is there a reason to talk to the developer about making more open space in there? What are your suggestions?
How short are we on open space on this one?
It's not a matter of percentage.
Okay.
We have a good percentage of open space, it's just not active.
Okay.
You see what I mean? The tot lot is a small, and that's a nice provision, but most of the open space is trailways, and wooded areas. And while Eddie is correct, there's a lot of open space recreational area surrounding the development. That means the child has to leave the development. You're not going to ride a bike on North Landing Road. I used to do it with my son. That was 10 years ago. I wouldn't do it now. That would be dangerous. It's extremely dangerous, and it was dangerous then.
David?
But I'm not sure I understand what you want then. Cut down trees? It's wooded?
No, that's not at all what I said.
Well, but you said there's a sufficient amount of percentage on there. You want it to be more, explain what you mean by you want it to be more active. I mean, I kind of like the trails part.
Well,
I kinda like
but that is active.
I like the wooded parts too. I mean,
But you're also hanging your hat, David, on something that's really kind of, that's important to me, but it's periphery to what I suggested should happen to the development to make it quality.
I'm not
So, yeah,
hanging
you
my-
could do active open space by
me, I'm-
taking down a few trees. Excuse me, I wasn't finished with my sentence. So you could do active open space by taking down a few trees, if you wanted to, on that portion of the development that's eventually going to have a road closure. But that has to wait for the road closure. And so, yes, active open space is trails. You're right, we can walk on those, and those are great. But that's not what children do. They don't take walks on trails. They look for a place to throw a ball. They look for a place to play.
Okay, hold
So
on a second.
that's my thinking.
Hold on a second. I'm not hanging my hat on anything. I asked you what you wanted out in the way of it, because you said there was enough percentage, but there's also wooded areas and there's trails. So you want ball fields? I mean, I'm just asking you to explain what it is that you find is deficient about it.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
Mike?
I'm wondering if all of us have taken note, and Karen in particular, that there is a 4-acre parcel adjacent to proposed Nemo Parkway It has a trail running through it. And I'm having difficulty reading. It might not, I think it says 4.08 acres. Pardon?
Isn't that private?
Yeah, there's a private lot on there.
It's a private lot.
It's a private
It
lot.
doesn't look like a private lot to me. There's a lot. I mean, it's right up there on the, if we can make it big enough for us to see, we can take a look at it. Somebody who has prepared this could maybe comment on it. That parcel right there. What is that?
That's owned by the association. It's 4.08, and it's owned by the association. It's open space. It's all wooded, heavily wooded.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify that there's 4 acres of open space at that end, and then, you might, and then we'll be, eventually there'll be probably the area adjacent to North Landing Road. But my main point was I wasn't sure Karen was aware of the.
No, I'm aware of that. It's
4 acres,
wooded,
yeah.
so it's wooded with a trail.
Yeah.
It's heavily wooded.
David,
I think from what I'm hearing, Karen, you want to make it 19 lots and drop it down to 16, spread the houses out a little bit, see a little bit more green space, not so dense.
Tightly packed. It allows for larger side yard setbacks, which also add visual open space to a degree.
Jack?
I just think that, in this setting, south of the courthouse, that, you'd expect to maintain, more of a sense of open space and less dense, even though there is, open space on the north and to the west. I mean, they're required to maintain that open space just because of the interfacility traffic area. So, this is an area that you would expect to have lower, a lower density, of the development. So I kind of, I think that aligns with what Karen and kind of what David mentioned.
Well, my thought is when we approved, I think I had just come on the commission when this first phase was done, and at the time it seemed totally out of order for that area because they're small lots, they're small side yard setbacks, they're not real large houses, fortunately, and all we're doing with phase 2 is copying exactly what's there now. It's not necessarily good or bad. It is what it is. And I hear what you say. What you're saying is you'd prefer to see larger lots in phase 2 so that it doesn't look quite as tight as phase 1. And I don't disagree with you. I don't know that it's quite reasonable to say to the developer you can't do in phase 2 what we let you do in phase 1, but that's what we're here to debate. So, Ron?
Well, yeah, I hadn't been in this development since it was built, and so my impression was when I first drove in with the van, and the sighting of these BMPs, it gave you some visual open space. I think I know it's not active, but you didn't feel it enclosed when you're right coming into the property. Of course, it's not completely built out, so that's one thing. And then the wooded passive, I guess that'd be passive open space, is significant up on Nemo. Have you talked with the developer about reducing the lots? Is that something they're amenable to doing or not? I mean, that's. Do you want to bring him back and ask? Because there was no discussion of that until, it would have been helpful. I think it would have been helpful to bring this up when he was presenting the application, and maybe ask him what he thought. But we can bring him back up.
Well, we finished pretty quickly right after the traffic, with all due respect, at that time.
Okay,
But I do think, I know Mr. Bashar did call me twice and have some discussion about it, and said he'd get back to me after the second discussion. So I don't know whether or not Eddie has the liberty to get back to me on Mr. Bashar's behalf in that discussion, so.
Could you come back up, Mr. Chairman? Would
Yes,
you allow him to come back up?
certainly. Just keep it at a.
I'll try not to filibuster.
Thank you.
And I understood that my client had advised you of what he was willing to do, and if that didn't happen, that's, I'm sorry, I understood that had occurred. Karen and I had conversations about this, and I was in the middle, and then I had Steve Bouchard contact Karen directly. What they have indicated a willingness to do, and I won't address all the things that y'all talked about, I would have some comments, but I won't. They are willing to reduce by 1 the number of lots and spread the lots out such that the lots will be wider, and that the setbacks between the minimum side yard setbacks, which are currently 5 feet, will be 6 feet, which widens it out, because you have a 50-foot lot that becomes part of, when you spread it all out, every lot gets, a couple of feet, some maybe 2.5, 3 feet wider. But the product is established, the neighborhood, you want the neighborhood to be homogeneous. It's very well received in the marketplace. Anyway, and it's not apartments like you got down the street. I did neglect to mention something, and I'm sorry to get off, but this is something that I don't want to just distract from the number, but we have agreed that we would reduce by 1 the number of lots and make the lots wider and the setbacks greater side to side. I forgot to mention this, and I apologize, but one of the things that also needs to be, at least you ought to be aware of, this section of the community, we are proposing, because we have to, that the streets be paved 34 feet wide instead of 30 feet wide, as the rest of the community and the rest of most of all of Virginia Beach. Because there has been a recent policy change that in order to have parking on the streets, you have to have it on both sides of the street. You have to have a 34-foot wide pavement section instead of a 30-foot wide pavement section. And 98% of the streets in residential neighborhoods in Virginia Beach are either 30 feet or less. So all of a sudden, this section is going to be different from this section, because our streets have to be 34 feet wide pavement section versus 30 feet wide, which I didn't mention, which, if we go back to 30, that also provides more green space, and the extra pavement is just ludicrous in my view. It's a little bit on target, but not what, I know it's not what Ms. Beardsley-Quasney is necessarily looking for, but that is something that the Bouchards, being good members of the community, have offered, and I thought that it could be communicated, but was
No,
not.
it was communicated, but the end point of our conversation yesterday was, I said, the residents were looking for 4 to 5. You're offering 1. I'm saying come to 2 or 3. That's a reasonable compromise. He said, I'll get back to you. So I guess this is your getting back to me.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of all of the, I was under.
Machinations?
I was, yeah, it was my understanding that Steve had advised you that all they would do is 1.
I
so-
still feel strongly that, and I'm not being bullheaded or
I didn't say
capricious
you
or any of those things. No, I know you didn't. I'm just saying, I still feel strongly that 2 to 3 lots would be a much better option and would allow for more open space in the internal.
Let's see, you had yours up first, then Don, then Jeff.
Since we have 4 acres of passive woods that we obviously, as a mother, you're not going to send your children in to play ball in the woods, or anything in the woods, because all they're going to do is get in trouble in the woods. And there is no open ball space playing, other than the tot, what's that called?
Tot lot.
Tot lot. And the rest is BMPs, and they're lovely, and they're trails, and kids don't walk around trails, but is there I'm of the same mindset. I would like to see much more active, open space in this community that is usable for those children to actually play in, i.e. ball, running, tag, that kind of thing. We've got all these woods down here. Is there a reason why we cannot clear them? Part of that?
Well, no, I would not suggest you there's a reason you couldn't, but I would suggest that, and this is how when I grew up, and I'm sure when you grew up, we've got Courthouse Elementary School within very short distance.
I'm
You
just,
got Kellam High School, very short distance, all the active recreational fields there. This is a small development. This is not a large, 100-lot subdivision. You know, it's a very small development on a very small piece of property, and we can't expect, I would assert, where you have all kinds of recreational amenities throughout this. This is in a sweet spot. That's why the prices are, for the same house, a lot higher than they are elsewhere, because there are so many recreational opportunities that are very, very close by. You can't expect every little development to have those, unless you're going to build a lot of apartments like was down this, right around the corner, which we did apartments here, we could do that.
I agree. Let me just.
I mean, open space to throw a ball, yes.
You're not going to put a 12-year-old on a bike and shoot him down that road.
But we're also
You're just
not going to put a baseball diamond out.
I'm not
here,
asking
or a
for
soccer
I'm
field.
not asking, Eddie, I'm not
I think
asking
that's
for
what,
base.
but I think that's what
Well,
Dave was asking.
I don't think Dave would, I don't think
Well,
Dave.
I don't know what.
I don't think Dave was asking for a baseball.
No, I think he was asking what it is.
Right, correct.
What it is that
I
you're,
think I don't think anybody was talking about a baseball field. I think.
Let's call it
I was just asking if that was.
well, if we had some direction, that's what I mean, that's really my question. I wasn't trying to be argumentative. It's what counts as quote, active open space versus what's proposed here that's feasible on this size of development. I'm really not trying to be argumentative. I'm not sure what.
I know you're not, and I'm not either.
I'm not sure what counts.
I'm just
What
saying
meets
as
that
a-
definition.
The answer here
Well,
is.
I can give it to him.
All right.
All right, first, who had their hand up next? Did you want to speak, or Don? Don?
This deal about the width of the street has got my curiosity up. Is there anything that the city, can the city offer variance on street width? Because
We will be applying for one, and I'd communicated that fact to Karen as well.
That's a large amount. I mean,
Correct.
in a small development like this, that's a large amount.
We will absolutely be seeking a variance from that new policy that roadways have to be 34 feet wide instead of 30 feet wide in order to be allowed to have parking on both sides.
So that'll give us, if that variance is granted, that'll give you more.
It'll be more green space, that's
Right,
absolutely
right,
correct.
more green space.
Well, you're going to have the same distance between the units. You'll have a little larger front yards, but anyway, my
Yeah,
point is, you give up one lot. How many lots are there in Phase 2? 20?
19.
19, one lot. Where would you even recommend that you take that one lot out?
Well, we would take one lot out, and then that would provide exactly, it would provide more than 2 feet of additional width for
But
all of the lots.
only on just a few lots, because.
No, the whole,
moving wa-
you'd redesign the whole thing, the whole thing would be redesigned, and you would be able to widen, all the lots,
Okay.
Mr. Thornton. There's no.
Jeff?
I do have a, can
You
I
go
do
first.
that first?
Absolutely.
Because the open space thing, my sense of what we're looking for is something that's cleared, maybe an acre and a half, fenced, and has a few playground equipment, pieces of playground equipment on it. And otherwise, it's open space to use for various activities.
pocket park.
It could be soccer, it could be playing tag, it could be frisbee, it could be,
Something.
whatever. I mean, just open space.
Oh, I'm
Doesn't have to be a baseball diamond.
I'm confident we can attempt to accommodate that. The tot lot was a suggestion and a product of the meeting that we had many, many months ago before the stormwater study with the ITA committee, that because there are a lot of younger children that are going to be in this neighborhood, and once they get older, they'll go out of the neighborhood. That was the idea of the tot lot. But I certainly, we're open to trying to hit the spot as far as, making the open space a little more usable, if that's the desire.
Jeff, you have a question?
Yeah, just in rereading this, it made me think of a question here, where we're talking about modification of the Phase 1 proffers, and we're saying we want to replace number 7, which has all the setbacks listed. What were the setbacks that we're replacing? Because that's not in here.
The setbacks aren't being changed. The only reason for the modification is, as Dr. White said, is the lot coverage was the only change. We didn't change and are not changing any of the setbacks. It's just the lot coverage.
Gotcha.
Because of and I could go into all the details, but I'll spare you all that.
That's fine, I didn't.
Yeah, the setbacks are identical. It's just the lot coverage that from.
Mr. Ripley?
I asked a question with Mike. Mike, you brought up clearing and adding some active, maybe area of a park. Are we talking about him losing density and doing that too?
No, on the 4-acre parcel.
Just
That's
do
already
that?
open
Would
space.
would that be sufficient as far as
That's
opening
the
up
sense
the,
I was getting from.
Well,
and not reduce the one lot?
Oh, yeah, that too.
You want the lot reduction?
Oh, yeah,
and you
a
want
lot
that.
reduction and clearing and fencing.
Jack's got a question.
I guess that's, that wasn't my thought. My thought was the reduction in lot density to provide, it seems like there's been discussion on the open space itself, but my thoughts are, just aligning with the density you'd find in the southern part of Virginia Beach, and not necessarily the density that's provided, and even though there is phase one, clearing of, existing stand of trees to provide, ball field, I guess there's some benefits to that, but I also see the benefits of, having a existing stand of mature trees that, is untouched, and it has, in a way that space has to be open because it can't be developed. So those were my thoughts.
I was only taking an acre and a half of the 4 acres. I mean, you still have some trees.
So Karen, if you made a motion to approve this and you wanted to add a condition or your thoughts in terms of the number of houses in phase 2, you were talking to him, I think I heard you say 2 or 3 or 4 lot to short it, and they came back at 1?
We
So that-
started with 4.
Okay.
Well, the residents did. The
Right.
residents who had written letters, with 2 in particular who identified numbers, but we started with 4 or 5, and he came back with 1, and I said, well, 2 or 3 sounds more like a compromise. Now, mind you, I think an acre of open space, with all due respect, an acre of open space and 2 lots would be a reasonable compromise. The 1 lot just doesn't feel to me like he's coming enough to provide more of what's needed for that area. And I just think he can do better. I do.
Well,
I
you're
do.
perfectly able to make a motion that way if you feel inclined to do so. And any other comments before we?
Condition.
Yes.
This is a conditional rezoning. They are voluntary proffers offered by the developer, and as such, you cannot condition it with an approval. You can approve it, or deny it.
Or we could defer it.
Or you can defer it. I mean, those are your options. You
Okay.
don't get to condition it.
Okay, then if one of your options is to make a motion to defer it and go
I'd
back
like
and
to make a
talk
motion to defer it
to the
so that we can the developer can have some further discussions about this 1 acre of open space or 1 acre plus and the number of lots that can be reduced to open up the side yard setbacks.
I'll second that.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yes, it is. I
Okay,
said I
we
like-
have a motion and we have a second.
Second.
Second by Dee, motion by Karen.
And that would defer both of these applications, number 9 and number
9
10.
and number 10.
And Don, you have a point?
I just have a comment to make that if it's going to be deferred, I would like for, between now and then, that somebody look in the vicinity of how many ball fields there are. Because, there are lots of ball fields well, let me finish. There are lots of ball fields within walking distance of this development. You got North Landing Elementary School, you got Votech and all right down with more ball fields. You've got Courthouse Elementary, you've got Kellam High School. So I kind of like Jack's scenario about the wooded trails. I mean, we've got people coming to us all the time. We've got a nice wooded trail here for people. There's a development they've done there in the works, that somebody's talking about that. And you got this little wooded area. I think it would be about a disaster to, I think you could go in there and make a nice trail system through that wooded area, but to go in and clear that wooded area for a potential ball field, I mean, I would more, if you do push for the 2 lot decrease, I would want to enlarge in the lots and not put a large tract of land that somebody's got to look after, or a larger tract of land that somebody's got to look after for a playground that's not going to be used near as much as a tot lot, or maybe enlarging the tot lot slightly. But the small age kids are the ones that use it, and like somebody said earlier, when the kids get 10, 11 years old, they're gonna go to these ball fields where they can walk to, so that would be my suggestion. If you do anything, put the extra space in the lots for their homes, but I would not go in and clear the trees.
So my motion was to defer, to have them come
Right.
back with a better plan that takes into consideration these
And
elements.
we have a second,
Any one of them
and
in
would
particular,
you make sure Mr. Horsley is part of your deliberation with the developer? Or at least his
Sure.
heard.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts before we vote? We good to go? Ed, we're gonna do it electronically, or?
Votes open. By a vote of 11-0, the commission has deferred items 9 and 10.
Thank you. We have
Okay.
One more.
We have one more item on the agenda, and that's item number D1. And that's Mohammed Rabini, an application for a conditional use permit motor vehicle sales on property located at 801 South Lynn Haven Road, District 3, Rose Hall. Do we have a representative here for that application? If you would come forward and state your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Thank you, honorable council members. My name is Mohammed Rabani. I am one of the owners of the property at 801 South Lynn Haven Road, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Good afternoon to you all. We have owned this, I was here back in February. We have owned this lot since 2006. I am a resident of city of Virginia Beach since 2000. I live about a mile down from this particular lot or particular store. I have been there for 17 years. I am a part of that community. Last time I was here, we mutually agreed to have some extra time to work with the wonderful staff at the planning department, and particularly Mr. Sanders. You guys have an extremely professional staff. They worked with us, This particular site, there were a couple of points that was raised by the planning department. I will get to them later. The first thing we did was, when we came up with the proposed car lot, we actually canvassed the neighborhood, both the commercial and the residential, both of them. At the time, I met with the planning department. We only had 20 letters. Every one of the neighbors, both commercial and residential, who have a direct sight of this property, have been visited, and almost 99% of them have signed consent letters. Now we have 40 with 0 objections. And that includes commercial and residential. Couple of finer points that were raised last time. The number one issue was, we talked about the parking spaces. There was an issue about the number of parking spaces. I thought that would be resolved. It didn't come up in the way it did the last time, but this time it came up again. And the honorable members of the planning department wrote that the parking lot does not meet ADA or zoning ordinance standards. Really? I mean, onto the side right here, that concrete pad, all of it contains the handicap ramp. Everything is brightly painted, blue, white, everything handicap compliant, because the site holds a lottery license. In order to get the lottery license, just about, I think now every year, you are visited by a representative of the state of Virginia to make sure that you are constantly in compliance with all the ADA standards. The other point that I think they may have in mind was the gap or the distance of the parking spaces. Well, Lynn Haven Mall across the street I actually measured it twice to make sure before I came and spoke to you guys. They have exactly the same size parking spaces as I do. Well, if it's good enough for them, why not for the little guy? Now, this lot, back in March, was resealed and pinstriped and stuff, but we didn't realize it. We wanted to do it again. We didn't like the results of it. So as of right now, it's been about 2 weeks ago, it was seal coated again, and it's waiting pinstriping. You see a little bit of shadow of the old multiple layers of the pinstriping there. So that was one of the points. The other thing about, predominantly that area being a retail oriented, yes and no. 2 doors down, there is a car lot in operation since late 1990s. And the same existing facilities, if I'm not mistaken, since 1970s, has been a automotive repair facility too. So that gentleman added on from a repair facility to a car lot. And to this day, to the best of my knowledge, up till yesterday, he was still in operation. And he has the same thing. Maximum cars allowed for sale on the lot are 12. However, the point to be noted here is that gentleman's lot right here, look at the size of the lot. Look at the frontage. And look at this. So if this gentleman was granted the permission, judging the size of the lot, location, why not us? Now, we did our own research as signed, dated telephone number and address letters from the commercial and residential neighbors. A proposed 12-car lot will not add any significant traffic. The other point raised on this report by the honorable members of the planning department was conflict of interest because the store or the facility is being operated by a tenant. Well, let me explain this to you then. We have the lease. It can be provided if, needed. We have clearly highlighted to our tenant this and this leased. All this, this for sole use of the landlord. It clearly states in order to prevent any future conflict. We had thought about that, so we had put it in writing and color-coded it just in case if there was any future issues. We maintain complete right of access and use of all facilities inside and outside of that existing structure with no exceptions. Now, I have been part of that community for, like I said, for about 17 years. I have lived in Virginia Beach. I have enjoyed every second of it. I have spent most of my adult life here. I came here, I started with nothing. It's been a journey for me, and at that, a great one. A person, buying your first house, starting a business, and then, owning your first commercial real estate. So I have been blessed. The community that I have been part of for the last 17 years have been great to us. This is why, before we even did anything, we canvassed the neighbors, especially those around us. That includes all the commercial neighbors that directly see us, print shop, all these neighbors right here, and these, to make sure that none of them had any objections. If somebody had anything to say, we reached out to them. So I believe as of right now, are there any known opposition? Is there any known opposition, Mr. Sanders?
No, sir.
No. I know your time is precious, and I'm not going to drag it any longer. but we have done our due diligence. We took our time. We worked with the wonderful staff right here, with Mr. Sanders and company. Now, the city asked for particular stuff. Yes, you have a right to ask for that. We sat down, we had multiple meetings. Right now, don't look at it from what it looks now. Think of it as how it will look. This, it changed. Did I do it or did it do it? Did it happen automatically?
It happened automatically. He can switch it back for you. Give him a second.
Okay, thank you. This fence right here is an old dilapidated fence. It will come down, as we have proposed and agreed. We will take it down. It will move further back, like I think one of you gentlemen suggested last time. I believe that was Mr. Redmond suggested that the fence might equal the building in the back. That has been done. That we agreed to it. The other proposals that the city staff asked for was the proper screening, landscaping. The trash container on the other side needs to have a fence around it. Now, on the front, if we could move, all this is green. This, the neighbors have no, I mean, those, I believe some of them are as tall, some of the bushes are as tall as 10 to 15 feet. Same goes on that side. From this end, all the way continuously, it is fenced in.
Your time is up, so wrap up for us, please.
So all the other things that the city asked for, no signage, has been agreed to. No signage, all screening, landscaping, including landscaping the entire frontage of the site facing Southland Haven Road has been done. Once again, I thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. If there is any questions, and also the building, I have been made aware by the Planning Commission that it may or may not meet the regulations. I am willing to take that chance when they come in. I mean, when the steps needs to be taken.
Let's see, anybody have any questions of Mr. Rabbani?
I got a question. The conflict that seems to be the convenience food, or part of the conflict is the convenience food, the gas, and the car sales all in one spot. And then the car sales doesn't seem to even have a bathroom associated with the building, and it doesn't seem to be, it doesn't really appear, it appears to be more temporary business than a real permanent nice business. Now, that's one issue. Getting by the mixture of uses is another issue. Can you talk about them?
Yes. Two parts to your question. Number one, the restroom access. We maintain unrestricted access to the store premises. There is a ADA compliant restroom in there, which will be open to our potential clients. And yes, you are looking at your comment, with all due respect, you're looking at it as of right now, the way it looks. But it looks non-permanent, but we are trying to make it better into a permanent facility, because all the upgrades and everything else asked for by the Planning Commission, about the building, the structure, electrical and all that, will make it into a permanent structure, I guess.
What would this permanent structure look like? I mean, it look like it's temporary to us.
It will be anchored down. I mean, or permanent structure, if you're asking for a construction, when you got to look at it from a...
We've seen a lot of automobile dealers come in with really nice facilities. And, this doesn't seem to reach the same mark at all. Not even close. And so, I mean, I'm just putting that out as part of the issues. And so I'm asking you to address what it looks like. And it sounds like you're answering what I surmise, and that is it may be more temporary than permanent. It doesn't even have a bathroom, first of all.
When we had the state
they're separate businesses, and they're all kind of intertwined, and it's just...
Yes.
I think that's part of the pushback here. As part of the pushback
I don't know what Ron
is also the mixture of these uses, and they seem to conflict. It's not real clear how that's going to be effective and how it's going to really look to the public, too. So that's part of what we're doing here.
We have a drawing that.
I saw it.
You saw that, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, that would be the, how it will look like.
Nice shed.
But again, you are not talking about a beach Ford, I believe, 8.5-acre facility, plus or minus, maybe, this is a small
Even
business.
smaller ones are more substantial than what we're looking at here. It just appears temporary to us. If somebody's asking for a temporary use, it's almost like a temporary parking lot that we see down at the beach.
Hey, Ron,
I mean, that's just the way I see it.
would it even make a difference, and this is something you start down a path and I don't know if this would make a difference to anybody, but if you got rid of the shed completely and you leased a few square feet back from your own tenant inside that facility, and that's where you hung your keys for the cars, then you have your bathroom, would that, I don't even know if that'd even make a difference. Yeah.
You still got the mixture of uses, so. And if I understand from staff, and, I was trying to listen to what their concerns were, that was a concern.
But I will say at a lot of I remember the one off of the South Plaza, I believe, where they do fuel sales. They do, he was getting automobile sales, and then they do sell snacks inside.
Yes,
Now, granted,
South Plaza and Rosemont.
That's now 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
it is, okay, but it was, I mean,
Right, right.
and I'm not
He
justifying
operated
what,
out of one building, too, didn't he?
I'm sorry?
Did he operate out of one building?
Yeah.
And he operated it all.
Oh, yeah, out of one building. So, I mean, granted, he's got a lot more snacks and drinks and all the other stuff of a convenience store, but, where's the line draw between having a rack of peanuts versus having a full convenience store? I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, David,
I want to piggyback on that, on both of them also, being that it's multiple uses on this lot, but the problem I have a problem with is we have a comprehensive plan, okay? And then the comprehensive plan states that this is not the proper land use for this area. And that's what I have a hard time thinking about. I'm just having a hard time with that. Also, with the multiple uses on the one lot.
I have a question for you. Do you actually run the Valero? Is that your business?
No, sir, leased out.
You're the landlord?
Yes, sir.
And you have a tenant in there, and the tenant that's in there is perfectly comfortable with having you sell cars on the front parking lot?
Yes, sir. It's part of, when the lease was done with them, it was clearly explained to them that this is what you are looking at. This is what you got, and this is what we may or may not intend to do
Doesn't
with
necessarily
this.
mean that they think it's a good idea, but it's legally what they have to agree to.
They seem to have no objections. We have a very long-standing relationship with them. They purchased, not just at this site, with the oil company, they purchased gasoline from us for their other sites from us too, which is all out of their free will.
Okay. Well,
So we have a very great working relationship with them and their partners for a significant amount of years.
Other questions? Jack?
Mr. Rabbani, I just, want to say I admire your past history and, your tenacity and, getting general support for, this application. I've got a couple questions. One is maintenance of vehicles. Typically, we've seen some of these car lots that, they have on-site maintenance, whether it's cleaning the vehicles or, just doing general maintenance. How would you intend to do the maintenance if it was approved? Like, what is your...
If it is approved, it can be made part of the conditions, no maintenance being done on the yard. I'm not opening up a mechanic shop. I don't have time for that. I am not trying to run a pick and pull or a repair facility. The vehicles will be presented there. There is already agreed no signage, none whatsoever. No kind of repair will happen on that premises, because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, this is kind of my retirement. I'm looking forward to that time. This is an income generating site for me for a very long time to come. Why would I want to be on a bad terms with my own tenant that is paying rent on time. The last thing I need is an angry tenant. The last thing I need is a neighbor that says, you have run down cars, broke down cars. I see you turning wrenches. Look at me. I don't turn wrenches. I don't do. So that is beyond my capabilities. But I can assure you, if that would alleviate the fears of me running a repair facility out of it, I would be more than happy to have a line inserted in it that says this is not a repair facility. No repairs on motor vehicles of any kind shall ever occur on the site.
Where would you do that?
Pardon?
Where would you do that? Where would you wash and detail and, because if you take in a used car, you will have to do something to
Yes,
it.
most vehicles, when you buy them from the auctions, we do not, most used car dealers, they do not transport the vehicles themselves. Repairs, I can tell you what, within 2 miles of this site, there's 4 or 5 different vehicle repair facilities. And as far as the detailing and stuff, most of it can be done off-site. Most detailers, yes, they are mobile, but within a mile and about 2 miles, Holland and Lynnhaven Parkway, there is a car spa. Right besides it, 2 doors down, there is another full-service detail facility. In fact, I believe one of them will actually drop your car off, give you a ride back and forth too. So there's plenty of options. That is something we are always willing to work
One of the things
with.
that we're dealing with here is the staff has made a recommendation that we turn this down, so there are no conditions in this. There are no conditions to say, yes, we'll go along with this, subject to these conditions. There are no conditions. So one of the things that we have to talk about when we close the public hearing is if we were inclined to go along with this, we've got to come up with a whole bunch of conditions, because we don't have any.
Okay.
There are none in here. I just want to make everybody aware of that. So the next thing we need to do is decide amongst ourselves where we're going with this, and if there's an inclination to grant this, we've got to take time out and condition it, seriously condition it.
Okay.
Because many of the car lots that we see in the city, no matter what the applicant says they're going to do, they end up doing way more. More cars, more work, more repairs, in some cases, more junk. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out to my colleagues here. Jack? Hold on a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I perfectly understand your concerns. But, again, just a point to be made, I cannot be blamed for Mr. Wiener's actions. I cannot be held accountable, for how Karen's yard looked like. It is mine. I own it. It took 7 years of my life to get to a point where, 7, to get to a point where I was able to buy it. I worked. This was my first job. I worked at this place in 2000 as a cashier. And when I acquired it in 2006, it was in bankruptcy. Miller Oil.
Let me,
so,
I don't want to stop.
I said.
We have to debate this amongst ourselves. I think if anybody's got any more questions for you, we will. Jack?
The one thing is the stacking of vehicles, and I count the number of spaces there, and that they don't support the number of vehicles that are listed, and it's not a huge number of vehicles, but the number of spaces that are provided there do not equal the number of vehicles that are.
This is a very old. The pictures is older. The parking lot can actually hold 37 parking spaces. It's 37 marked parking spaces.
That's understood. It's actually just the area that's denoted for
car lot.
If we did approve it, that the area would be subject to that small corner, the smaller area towards the southern part of the lot, and that doesn't appear to be the number of spaces that is listed in them.
We did the measurements, the minimum required. It can, we're asking for 12, but it can easily hold 15 to 16 cars.
Well, I'm just talking about the spaces, the number, because I look at it, and if maybe that's just my thoughts, is, a certain area specific to the site, if we did approve it, it would be in the southern corner. And that corner only has, I think, 8 spaces. And I mean, there's.
Are we talking about this?
That, yes.
Yes. This can, actually, it's been re-pinstriped. So this can easily hold about 15 cars. And on this end, it leaves another, which is outside of the proposed car lot area, another 4 spaces.
I count about 10. But, I guess that's open to, I'm just looking at the aerial photograph. And maybe it's, just a skew.
What is the date, if you don't mind me asking, on that Google Earth or whichever one are you using, sir? Yes, sir. This is a very old one.
Well, it basically, the plan that is in this application takes your area, it doesn't matter how many you can put there, they have said in here that you can only put 12.
12, yes, sir.
So it
Which
doesn't
we
matter
agree.
if we can put 100 there, all you're talking about is 12.
Yes, sir.
So that, I think we can limit whatever happens here to 12,
Yes,
because
sir.
that's what you've asked for.
Yes, sir.
So, I would like to get to the debate phase with the members of the commission. Are you good with that? Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to wait here, or?
Have a seat, and if we need you, we'll get you back.
Thank you kindly.
stand
I
by.
really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
You're welcome. Is there any other speaker, Ms.
No.
Secretary? Okay, well, we'll close the public hearing. I don't think we've done that yet. So now we've closed the public hearing and open it for discussion. Who wants to speak, or who wants to make a motion, or who wants to ask a question? Dee?
Well, I think
Go ahead, Mike.
I think the biggest problem we have is that this is contrary to comprehensive plan. I
Right.
mean, we passed a comprehensive plan, we worked on it, we passed it, we got to respect it. And it's the comprehensive plan recommends the area west of Lynn Haven Parkway provide corporate office, retail, or other comparable commercial uses on particularly on high visibility sites such as this. And I just think that this crosses the line where we don't really, do not intend to go with a comprehensive plan.
Ron, Ron?
You know, I'm not particularly enamored by the use and the quality of the proposal as far as the building and whatnot. Just doesn't, like I said earlier, that's bothered me. I think, on the other hand, I'm very impressed with the applicant, because he really wants to make a go of it here, and we want commerce to flourish in the city for sure, and that's to be commended. You know, if it was a better quality application, I think I would try to find a way to work with it. I don't know if it would make a difference to the staff and their final approval,
Recommendation?
recommendations and evaluation, but, the fact that it's intermingled with these two buildings and you have to go to use the restroom, and the building that looks like it's put out there, looks like one of the sheds you might buy off of a lot and stick out there, and as he indicated, he'll nail it down. Well, I'd rather see if you're gonna do this, it'd be a substantial building that's compatible with what's there. And it looks more like a retail environment versus sort of haphazard. And I think that's what I can't seem to get by. I think if and like you said, if the commission was inclined to consider, it would need a whole bunch of conditions, which we haven't even addressed. So I'm kind of on the fence there.
Jeff, and then Dave.
No, I was just going to reiterate what Mike and David said was, there's a reason we have a comprehensive plan. We wrote the comprehensive plan. The staff abides by the comprehensive plan, and in as much as I understand that he would like to have a mixed-use type of business, that's not what this area calls for. And if we don't abide by what we are designing for our city and how we want that to look like today and 20 years down the road, then we're just sort of, we're not using it. We're not doing what we as planners are supposed to be doing. And as much as I would like to see them, I mean, do well, I just don't think that this type of mixed-use convenience store, used car sales combo business, I just don't, I don't want to set a precedence for that to begin with, that everybody thinks that they have enough acreage to start doing that. And then we don't follow the comp plan on where we want something like this to go. We're going to start tripping over ourselves in a lot of ways. So I've got to support staff in this completely.
Jeff?
As it stands, I can't support the application, but for me, if the shed was gone, the fence was gone, he was able to incorporate his office somehow inside the existing building, and we put some sort of maybe time limit on this like we do a lot of others, whether it's 5 years, because he's not having to do really any improvements to the property. So if you had him come back in 5 years, or whatever the number of years that we think would fit in case this area started to get redeveloped, I could probably get more behind this, but it would take those type of changes for me to be able to do it.
Dave first, and then...
Yeah, I couldn't. I mean, I just think these uses are inherently in conflict with one another. It's one too many use on this site. The example that we cited at, on South Plaza and Rosemont Road, and I just remember that being a headache. When that fellow would come in here for various uses, there were cars spilled out into the streets, and there was a trailer parked in the back of it. It's too much stuff on one site. It's just too much activity on one site. And I think it was Bob or Jack earlier who'd asked, how do you service these vehicles on the lot? How do you wash them and vacuum and all this? There's just a lot that goes on here, and I can't see, even if you stuck it in the same building, how that's really going to work. They're just not going to play well together. I just don't think you can put those pieces together and have them work. So I'm certainly not going to support the application. Make a motion if you like, Freddie.
One thing is, I like is the continuity of decisions, among the planning commission. And, whether it's in the past, or it is, in the near future, the near term. Because there's, 2 doors down, there's Chief's Auto. But I'm not sure if that approval was done when there was a special economic growth area, when Sega 2 was in place. And I'm not sure if even staff can answer that, but, the staff actually, their recommendation was to deny that previously. And on top of that, Chief's Auto, I don't know if they're necessarily complying with their conditions. And I don't necessarily like the aesthetics of it being there right at South Lynn. So there's, I like the continuity of decision, but I don't necessarily like, that being there currently. And I don't think it necessarily meshes with the comprehensive plan currently as part of the special economic growth area. So that's my one concern, but is the continuity of decisions, but it's also, I don't necessarily like that business, currently in the form that it's in.
Well, I want to sort of finish this up, if I may. When he was here in February, we were uncomfortable with this. So we sent him back to the drawing board to meet with the staff and put some time back in it, and the staff is still not comfortable with it. And so, as far as I'm concerned, nothing's been done to make it better than it was in February. I think the staff has done an admirable job of working with this person and trying to get it to the point where they could bring it to us with a recommendation. And I commend them, because most of the time they bring to us recommendations with conditions that make it a better application. In this case, they brought forth no conditions to make this a better application, which indicates that they are certainly not in favor of it. So to support these folks that work for us, I'm agreeing with most of you guys, and I need a motion. Dave?
Mr. Chairman, I move denial of the application.
Okay, do I have a second?
A second.
2 Daves. Dave Moved and Dave seconded. Thank you.
Vote is open. I vote 10-0, the commission has disapproved, denied the application of Muhammad Rabbani.
Thank you. Is there any further business? If none, on behalf of my fellow commissioners, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today and thank the planning director and his staff for their work in preparing for today's agenda. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all for getting me out on time.
That's fine. Happy graduation.
At 2:45.